Good morning. This is Ed Hamrick. I'm an Assistant Attorney General and I represent the State Board of Land Commissioners. The board is back on the record. Previously, the board was in executive session to discuss the Cagin v. State of Colorado case. The discussion was limited to privileged attorney-client communication and no board actions were taken in executive session. Now the board is back on the record. It is free to proceed with its regular open meeting and agenda. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate that. Good morning, anyone and all who have joined us this morning via Zoom. This is the January 10th Board of Land Commissioners meeting virtually, which we haven't done in a while. I feel rusty. So appreciate everyone's being with us this morning. We will open this meeting to public comment for anything that's not related to an agenda item today. We did receive public comment via email that will be entered into the record. But at this time, let's open up the screen to see if anyone has anything else not related to our agenda that they'd like to speak with us today about.
So folks listening along online, you've got a button on your screen that says raise hand. And if you'd like to address the board with a comment unrelated to the things we have on our agenda today, now's the time. Click that raise hand feature. We'll switch you to promote panelist view, which will give you the ability to address the board via Zoom. I'm out of practice too, Commissioner.
We're all doing great.
And I don't see any hands raised for open comment.
All right, super. Let's move forward. Director Ryan, any announcements for us?
I just want to officially welcome Elliot Hoyt. You all met him at the December meeting. Elliot's now officially joined the land board. He and Greg overlapped by a couple of weeks, and Elliot's hitting the ground running. And so I want to officially welcome him now that Greg is retired. And we'll be putting the posting for the other assistant director position out, I hope, in the next couple of weeks here. So I'd like to get a second AD on board in the first quarter if we can.
Terrific.
That's all.
Elliot, great to have you officially with us. And appreciate you trekking to the Western Slope and back last night.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, very good. We will move on to our DNR report.
Tim Brass, I know I saw you there. There you are.
Yeah, Tim's on.
Hey there, Tim Brass. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold here, so apologies in advance if I'm losing my voice. But my name is Tim Brass. I'm the Assistant Director for Parks, Wildlife, and Lands with DNR. DNR staff are currently busy gearing up for the 2024 legislative session, which began this morning and is scheduled to adjourn on May 8th. Expect to hear a lot more from us on DNR's priority legislation as it begins to move forward. For now, wanted to provide a couple of quick additional updates. First, a couple of staffing updates. With the recent retirement of Kevin Rain, we expect to begin advertising the state engineer role very soon. We are currently interviewing applications for our federal vacant affairs analyst position. And we are also evaluating applications for the position of the Assistant Director for Research with the Produce Water Consortium. Moving on to budget and legislative updates. This past week, we joined Governor Polis for the release of a pollinator study, which was developed in response to Senate Bill 199. This study was developed in coordination with the Colorado State University Extension, the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, the University of Colorado Museum of Natural History. Together, this group worked together with a team of researchers and department staff throughout state government, which included CDOT, CDA, CPW, and the State Land Board. The study provides important baseline information, including a synthesis of research, which highlights the importance of native pollinating insects to agricultural and natural resources within the state. A copy of this study can be found on DNR's website.
Hey, Tim, before you leave that, I just want to tell
Yeah.
our commissioners that Mindy Gottsigan was very involved with that. It's a really detailed study. And the land board's gotten quite a few kudos for our participation in that. And in fact, the Butterfly Pavilion is already reaching out to us to figure out, are there ways that they can partner with us as we pursue some of our own biodiversity goals? So sorry to interrupt you, Tim. Just wanted to
No, that's
bring
great.
it
Yeah.
across a little.
Yeah,
Very
thanks
cool.
for adding that in. I appreciate it. Additional legislative updates. DNR is continuing to work on a bipartisan piece of legislation to authorize CPW to reintroduce wolverines. The species is native to Colorado and was extirpated from the state back in the early 1900s. DNR is also engaging with the Colorado Energy Office and a wide variety of stakeholders on a legislative effort to reform the renewable siting process here in Colorado. We also anticipate legislation this session clarifying ECMC's authority over carbon sequestration projects and direct air capture facilities. Moving on to federal policy, the Department of Natural Resources recently submitted a comment in support of the Forest Service's proposed mineral withdrawal for the Thompson Divide. This proposed action reflects key provisions within the CORE Act, which is designed to maintain traditional land uses and habitat connectivity in the region. This is something that DNR and Governor Polis have long supported. DNR is actively working to develop comments on several key wildlife-focused Department of Interior land use plans, including the Greater Sage-Grouse RMPA, Gunnison Sage-Grouse RMPA, and the Big Game RMPA. DNR submitted comments in mid-December on BLM Solar PEIS with input that was provided by the State Land Board. We expect the draft Solar PEIS to be available for public comment in early 2024. DNR is also working on submitting comments to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on the interim 4D ruling for wolverines. This was spurred by the threatened listing decision, which occurred on November 29th. Moving on to the State Forest Service, in connection with the Department of Higher Education and at the direction of Senate Bill 5, the Colorado State Forest Service provided consultation to the Commission of Higher Education regarding the expansion and creation of new forestry programs at colleges and university campuses across the state. State Forest Service provided recommendations on which programs should have access to funding provided by this bill. The Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Program recently completed its second round of workforce development grants, which closed in this past fall. DNR received 33 applications and will be awarding funding for a range of wildfire mitigation projects across the state. As for ECMC is going to have a busy year of rulemaking this year. They're anticipating rulemakings on cumulative impacts, deep geothermal operations, and carbon capture and sequestration projects. ECMC is also currently conducting studies on geothermal technology and regulation, carbon capture and storage technology, and other emerging technologies. A couple of quick water updates. In June, the Department of Interior announced a formal process to develop future Lake Powell and Lake Mead operating guidelines. These new guidelines will replace the 2007 Colorado River interim guidelines, which govern the reservoir operations through 2026. The basin states are currently working together in an effort to develop a consensus approach for post-2026 operations that the federal government could then implement through a NEPA process. Commissioner Mitchell and team are working to ensure that Colorado's interests are protected through this process. Lastly, a couple CPW updates. As I'm sure you all are aware, Colorado Parks and Wildlife was successful in reintroducing 10 wolves within the state just before the holidays. This is an effort as a culmination of years of hard work from CPW staff and countless partners to meet the voter mandated deadline to get wolves on the ground before the year end. But now that wolves have been reintroduced, it'll be essential to the success of the species that we maintain a responsive and flexible management approach for resolving conflict. To ensure this is possible, CPW and the Department of Agriculture have signed a memorandum of understanding, which outlines shared management actions that will be taken to minimize impacts on agricultural producers. This includes the use of range riders and carcass disposal. Lastly, through the 10J ruling, lethal take of wolves is allowed when shown to be necessary. With that concludes DNR's updates. I'd be happy to take any questions you have and pass any feedback along from the commissioners to others within the department.
Any questions for Tim?
Yes.
Going to be a busy session. Commissioner Heath?
Yes, Tim, and I guess Christine and Bill as well. Would it be possible to have a report from the pollinator study when it's appropriate that we could schedule it for a board meeting? I think it would be.
That's fine, and we can also send you a copy of the report. Mindy is right now making a summary of the recommendations in it, and
Okay.
I'll send that all along to you. And then if you want to do to all 5 of you, and if you'd like to do a more detailed workshop on it, we're happy to assemble that as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think that'd be great.
I agree.
All right. Buckle up, Tim.
Thanks.
Here. All right. Let us move on to our business items. Staff report, Director Ryan.
Thank you, Commissioners. That's tab 1 in your packets. Just wanted to call your attention to a couple of items. First, we had a record year for revenues last year, but the other half of our mission is equally important, the stewardship side. And pleased to report that History Colorado is recognizing us in April for work related to our cultural resource preservation work. And so Mindy's been on point for a fair amount of that stuff. And Commissioner Heath is also going to represent us in a video around that award. And all of you are welcome to join us if you'd like. It's April 16th, as it says in the staff report, over at History Colorado. Let me know if you're interested, but I'm just proud that our stewardship work is also getting recognized, not just our revenue work. So shout out to the team that all works hard on that part of our mission. We've got 2 agricultural forums coming up. I think Kristen told me this morning that we right now have 100 folks registered for those 2 grazing seminars. So clearly starting to gain momentum and popularity, and I hope be seen as adding value to our ranching customers and help them help us, basically. And so proud of those efforts. And William, thank you for organizing all that. And that's really it. Other than that, I did want to just say on the 4th page of the staff report, we talked about the acreage reduction for our Carbon America lease up in Washington County. And, I put that in there partly because this is an evolving business for us. And we said we wanted to make sure we kept you updated as things proceeded here. And I think this is sort of a normal course of business. If somebody comes and gets a exploration lease to do all their testing, and in this case, they've found where they think the best pore space is, and so they've given back some acreage. And so this is working as planned and proceeding, but we wanted to keep you abreast of that as we learn our way around this new industry. So those are my only comments on the staff report. Happy to answer any other questions.
Terrific. Appreciate that. And Josie obviously deserves to be in film and television as often as possible.
It's too late for the Golden Globes.
Shoot.
But she's
Shoot.
an Emmy winner, so yeah.
Exactly. We have the right person. All right, wonderful. Thank you, Director Ryan. We are going to move on to our next information item, tab 2, Republican River Water Conservation District introduction with Justin.
Good morning, commissioners. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Let me pull up my slideshow here. Hope everybody had a good new year.
Yeah.
All right. Are you seeing the full slide or just the?
Yeah, we're seeing the whole thing with the, the slides on the left.
We're seeing all of PowerPoint, Justin.
Okay.
And that's your presenter notes.
Okay.
If you just go to display settings and maybe at the top here. At the top in the middle.
Oh,
Yeah. Click that and then swap view and slideshow. Yeah, there you go.
how's that? Okay. Sorry, I'm also our guest speaker says they are still trying to get in and they haven't received the invitation yet, Nick. So
Justin, I just emailed it to Deb.
okay.
Yep,
Okay.
and she'll come in as an attendee, and I'll promote her to panelist.
Well, I'll get going. Hopefully they're able to join while I'm giving an introduction here. So sorry for all the technical difficulties here. So good morning, commissioners. For the record, this is Justin Murray, the State Land Board Water Program Manager. This morning, I'm going to provide a brief introduction to the Republican River and the Republican River Water Conservation District before I turn it over to the district's board president, Rod Lenz, and the district manager, Deb Daniel. Hopefully they're on by the time we get there. The presentations this morning are information items only, and an introductory overview was provided on a cover sheet in tab 2 in this month's board packet. The presentations today and the information that will be presented is not intended to be a fairly super in-depth discussion of the Republican River Basin. I'll give kind of a Republican River Basin 101, and then our guest speakers will give more of a Republican River Basin 200. So not graduate level, but getting close to it. So the intention of all of this is to inform you about what's going on in that region for some upcoming decisions regarding land board assets that will be coming your way in the near future. This morning, we also have several water administrators listening in from the Colorado Division of Water Resources, including the acting state engineer, Tracy Kozloff. We also have Division 1 engineer, Corey DeAngelis, and the designated groundwater basins groundwater commissioner, Chris Grimes. I think Kelly Romero-Heaney was going to try to listen in. I don't know that she joined us. She's from Dan Gibbs' office as well. All of those folks are graciously listening in to be available to answer questions. And it's also kind of an indicator of how important of an issue the Republican River Basin is to the state of Colorado. As I mentioned before, I turn it over to our guest speakers. I'm going to briefly describe the Republican River Basin and how it relates to the state land board. So with that, let's jump into it. Okay, so we're looking at a map of Colorado and its water administrative regions. I don't know, hopefully our Brady Bunch isn't covering up the right-hand side of the screen in the Republican River Basin itself. But the Republican River Basin is located in northeast Colorado, and it falls within the administrative area of Division 1. So it is Division 1. It's not the South Platte, it's its own basin, but Division 1 is the one that administers it. If you can see the map and not being covered up by our view, there's a small line, really faint line, kind of north of the word Republican, and then there's a longer faint line just below the word Republican. The one to the above the Republican or north word of the Republican is the North Fork of the Republican River, and then the longer one to the south is the South Fork of the Republican River. Something kind of interesting and also important for the basin in general is that this river basin is the only major river basin within Colorado that doesn't have its beginnings or source in the mountains. As you know, water is super scarce in Colorado, and it's even more scarce in the Eastern Plains, especially without having any mountain snowpack as its water source. Okay, to zoom in a little bit, the Republican River Basin, as you might be gathering from this map, is made up of many tributaries, of which the main tributaries located in Colorado are the North Fork, the Rickery, and the South Fork. And on the left-hand side, or the west side of this map, you can see I've labeled those, called those out a little bit. I also want to point out the upper right-hand corner of the map. It shows the entirety of the Republican River Basin with each state that's involved. And then to zoom in more so at the tan or the khaki colors, it shows a little more detail of the basin. The water flows from west to east. The river is ultimately tributary to the Kansas River, which is tributary to the Missouri in Kansas City, which then is, of course, tributary to the Mississippi. Flows in the North Fork historically rarely exceed 75 cubic feet per second. Flows in the South Fork historically rarely exceed 40 cubic feet per second. And in the Rickery, it's occasionally flowing. It kind of varies between 0 and 10 cubic feet per second. And just for context, if you recall the ditch we visited, the canal diversion last May during the water tour along the South Platte River, the canal diversion that we were visiting at the time was running at 150 cubic feet per second. So these tributaries are small relative to larger canals on larger river systems throughout the state. So really we're talking about drops of surface water within the Republican River Basin, within the Colorado portion of the basin. The river definitely can and does get bigger, and it's a fairly sizable river by the time it reaches Stratton, Nebraska, and the Swanson Reservoir located just outside of Stratton. Looking at this map, I think it's fairly apparent that the Republican River is important to several states. And as you're probably aware, there's an interstate compact regarding the river between Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado. And our guest speakers will dive into more details of the compact, especially since they're the ones helping Colorado stay in compliance. That's what the Water Conservation District exists to do. All right, as the Republican River Basin relates to the land board. The land board properties located within the basin total approximately 250,000 acres, of which approximately 6,300 acres are irrigated. The remaining 243,700 acres are primarily grazing and dryland farming. Talking about the irrigation acreage, the 6,300 irrigated acres within the Republican River Basin make up approximately half of the land board's irrigated properties. So I want to pause and let that sink in for a second. This region is very important to the land board's irrigated holdings. The maps that we're looking at here on the left-hand side is, of course, the state of Colorado, and all the lighter blue or teal colors are the the totality of the land board's surface holdings. And on the map on the right-hand side is zoomed in on the Republican River Basin specifically. And this blue, darker blue color is the Republican River Water Conservation District's boundaries. Most of the land board's irrigation within this basin are located in the counties of Yuma, Washington, and Phillips County. We have a few in Kit Carson, but those are kind of going on the wayside as groundwater becomes more scarce in the region. So if you might be wondering if within the Republican River Basin there's not much surface water, then and it's super dry out there, then what are we irrigating with? And the short answer is with groundwater wells. The state land board owns around 50 groundwater wells in the Republican River Basin, and those 50 wells account for all of the land board's irrigation in that basin. And all of the irrigation wells within the basin are subject to the compact, including the land board's wells. So this photo, just for folks who haven't seen wells, the center of the picture, you see kind of a gray, I don't know how to even describe that, a gray, like R2D2 looking thing. That's the well itself, or the turbine motor. There's a blue flow tube with a meter connected to it going off to the right. And then the left structure is the power panel, the power source. This photo I took just before Thanksgiving, this last Thanksgiving. And you'll see some winter wheat coming up, the green vegetation just in the background. And then further back, you'll see some cattle grazing on some corn stalks, which were irrigated this last summer and harvested this last fall. Just wanted to describe it just to make sure we're all understand what we're looking at here. And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest speakers. Hopefully they're on. Rod Lenz is the Republican River Water Conservation District Board President, and he's a lifelong resident within the Republican River Basin, and his family has been large farmers in the basin. Deb Daniels is a general manager. She's been with the district for a long time, and after their presentation, we'll have time for questions and to discuss how the compact will impact the state land board lands and waters. So with that, we'll try to turn it over to them. Hopefully they're on.
They are.
We're here. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Good, great. So can you see our screen with multiple pictures of our basin?
No, nope, we're just seeing you, I think.
Oh, well, how do we share that? Let's try this again. All right, I want to share my screen. Okay, I'll bet this is gonna work better. Now, can you see our screen?
We can, and you may want to switch the view so we just see the slide and not your whole PowerPoint.
Okay, all right, very good. How about that? Can you see the slide now?
Yeah, go up to display settings because we're also seeing your speaker notes.
We don't want that. We just want slideshow. Is this what we want? Let's try that.
Commissioner Clark, you were doing such a good job guiding earlier. There, now it's perfect.
All right,
All right, that's what we want. Just want to make sure that you can see everything.
Thank you.
got it. Are we ready to go?
We're ready to go.
All right, my name is Rod Lenz. I am the president, as you saw, of Republican River Water Conservation District, and I'm also a little bit of my background. I'm a founding member of Lenz Family Farms north of Bray in Yuma County, and formed in 1976, third generation. I retired 5 years ago just to do the job I'm doing now. I couldn't farm and be president of Republican River. There were too many duties that were so important. So I went ahead and passed off my responsibilities on the farm to the next generation. They're doing a wonderful job, I'm glad to report. But I find the work that we're doing at Republican River so important and so valuable that I just couldn't split my time. So anyhow, that's my background. We farm, the family farm, so significant acres, probably 5,000 irrigated and a lot more than that with dry land and pasture. So it's a fairly well-established farm, but I'm glad to be part of the Republican River.
And I'm Deb Daniel, as Justin introduced us earlier. I've been with the district for 12 years. I've been in agriculture in some form all of my life. I've lived in entirety inside the basin. I grew up just across the state line in Nebraska and grew up just above the Rickery River. So there's a lot of my DNA that's embedded in the Republican River. So we're so grateful that you allow us this time just to give you some introduction to the RRWCD, what we've been doing, what we're doing, looking forward to, and some of the actions that we've had to take that may not always be the easiest, but they're getting us where we need to be.
So I think with the introduction that Justin gave, this is that same map that you can see the Ogallala actually lies over 8 states. It's a significant, probably the greatest aquifer in North America. And so you can see Colorado's hashed section of that. And we'll talk about all the implications that brings to this conversation.
So the map that Justin showed was really great because it colored in the Republican River Basin. Normally, this is what you're going to see on a snowpack map. You're going to see that this area is completely blank. And it's not because we're not important. It's just because we do not benefit from any snow melt in the mountains. We are a closed basin, so this is our boundary here. So we don't benefit from all of the rainfall that's to the west of us unless it lands right on our basin. So whenever you see this, and you'll see a lot of it this winter, this snow map, you'll see that we are not benefiting from it, but we are still just as important, I feel, even though we aren't colored in the map. So how did this whole thing start? It started back in the 30s. And in 1935, in late May, there was a large thunderstorm that started on the eastern plains east of Colorado Springs, and it moved across the basin very slowly. It took several days to get from Colorado Springs to mid-central Nebraska and Kansas. And this storm dumped 14 to 15 inches of rain. And it's hard to imagine what this looked like, but here's a picture of the dirty 30s on the plains. This was taken in Nebraska. This is a picture of the flood. And you can see here how people were standing on the railroad tracks and how the waters that moved through the basin flooded such a terrible amount of water. And like I said, my DNA is in the Republican River Basin because during this flood, my great-grandparents had homesteaded along the Republican River just into Nebraska, right along the river. My grandmother and my Uncle Glenn just missed it by minutes. Uncle Glenn had spent the day with my great-grandmother, and my grandmother Jenny had worked in the cafe at Bakelman, and she was picking him up and said, "Mom, I'll bring him back the next day." She gave my grandma Frances a kiss on the cheek, and she left, got in the Model T, and she and Uncle Glenn started heading back to Bakelman. And before they got there, she could hear what sounded like a train. She said there was no train around, but I could hear the roar of a train. And she got over the last hill, and all she saw was water. And this is some of that water. It was devastating. My great-grandparents' homestead got hit by a 15-foot wall of water with trees and buildings tumbling through it. And my great-grandmother Frances, whom I'm named after, my great-grandfather Irvin, my great-uncle Bud, and my great-aunt Myrna all drowned in the mud of the Republican River. They never did find their bodies. So it was an important event because there were 110 souls that drowned in that flood, but it also helped to bring us some flood control. And you can see here, this man is shinnying across on power lines, trying to get away from that building. And just minutes after he was able to get to safety, this entire structure collapsed in the flood. So it was a huge event. The 3 states went to the federal government because in the 30s, nobody had any money and they needed some help with flood control. And so because of that, the Republican River Compact was negotiated and signed in 1942. And from that, we have 7 reservoirs that were built. And the one that was in Colorado was Bonnie Reservoir. This is water spewing from the outfall structure. And here's the water that was in the structure at one time, Bonnie Reservoir. And you can see at one time it was considerably higher, but this was towards the latter part of the years of the reservoir.
Okay, this is a slide we'll be talking about as we go through this presentation, but this is once again the Republican River area. And you can see the population of the wells, the little dots of irrigation, and then the blue area is an area called the South Fork Focus Zone that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So this is kind of what's driving this conversation, and this is the historical water pumping from the entire basin. So you can see that back in the 40s, there was no pumping. It was all surface diversion at that time. And as we got into the 60s, we started to see the appetite of irrigated agriculture really rise. And so we were up to 1 million acre feet of pumping at one point. But typically speaking, we're around that 600,000. And you can see the trend of this graph going down a little bit. We're trying to drive that down more so we can elongate the life of the aquifer. But this is our appetite, but this also drives our economy. So it's not a negative slide, it's just reality, the good and the bad. Okay, this is a animated map. If you look at the top, it says 1945, it starts there, and it's really the ongoing development of wells. As we push it and it goes through the years, you'll see how wells were introduced. The purple dots are high capacity wells. The pink dots are domestic and livestock wells. In 1983, we had a moratorium on high capacity wells. So you'll see the purple dots stop and the pink dots continue. But this is just the south part of the basin. And I would love to see this map on the entire basin. That would really be informative. But you can see a lot of straws in the basin, and that's really that economic driver, and also the thing that is making our aquifer reduce so much. Another view of that same map from 1946, animated once again, shows you our saturated thickness, how it has declined over the years. These graphs are shown in meters. You can see down in the lower left-hand corner of the legend, it tells you how many meters of saturated thickness they have. But as the years go on, you can see the deep blue areas recede. In Kansas, Colorado, and Nebraska, you'd see the same thing. So this is just a reality check of what's happening to our stored water.
And as we go through the years, you can see that the colors are getting closer to orange and red. And so that's a big concern. And this map only goes to 2018. But look at the difference from when it started in 1946, and that's just before the large capacity centrifugal pumps were created, and to where it is in 2008. We know that this map looks worse than it does now. And like Rod said, it includes part of Kansas and a little bit of Nebraska here. This is a big concern for us right now on the North Fork, because that's the upstream of our only river that flows.
Right. So here's the flow graphs of our 3 tributaries that Justin was talking about. When it comes to the compact accounting, the South Fork, which is on the top graph, we get 44% credit in the compact model. So these flows, when they hit the gauge, we get 44% credit. The Rickery is 78% credit. The North Fork is 22% credit. But if you look at the graph trends, the North Fork, the South Fork on the top, it started at around 30,000 acre feet flows, and there were some really, really big years you can see in there. But generally speaking, we've reduced that trend down to intermittent flows. Recently, we've had some better flows with the drying up of Bonnie. It's created some new challenges. We'll talk about that later on. The Rickery, while we get 78%, it's not a lot of volume, and it's not continuous flow. Back in the day, in the 40s and 50s, it was probably at 15,000 acre feet. Now it's definitely intermittent. If we get water to the gauge, it's only for a short while. And on the North Fork, which is our only live stream year round, this one is critical. Deb pointed out on the last map that as those saturated thicknesses decrease, it threatens our live flow on the North Fork, and that is our really, really large concern right now. You can see the trend once upon a time was around 35,000 acre feet a year. Now we're down to 15 to 20,000 acre feet. If you look at the right side of that bottom graph, the green bars that are extended from the blue, that is our augmentation pipeline north of Laird. That's the water that we've used, we procured to keep us in compact compliance. Big investment, $60 million. We'll talk about that a little later, but that number we're keeping our flows, our deliveries up to about 28,000. Right now, that's about where we have to be, and those numbers will go up as time goes on. We'll have to deliver more and more water. Okay, so I think it's important to understand that what is the job of the RWCD? Straightforward, our job is to assist the state with compact compliance. We're not, even though conservation district is in our title, we don't have authority to restrict water pumping. What we can do is assess a fee and fund programs that encourage less water usage or better water stewardship. So we can encourage water conservation, but our whole goal is to, while the aquifer was designed to be mined over time, our job is to elongate that lifespan of the aquifer. And because at the bottom line is we're trying to preserve our rural economies.
So I have a 17-member board. You can see by the faces, these are the people that are making the really tough decisions. All of my board members are in irrigated ag in some capacity, and I have great staff. Some of our members have changed since this picture was taken, but you can see that we're a very large body and very progressively minded, as in my point of view.
Well, and I'm as the president of this board, I want to acknowledge that they are selflessly donate a ton of time. A lot of the board members don't even turn in expense sheets. That's how dedicated they are to serving for this purpose. And there are a lot of smart entrepreneurial individuals on that board. And so they're challenged. I mean, they challenge us all the time to do the right thing. It's made up, our board is made up of a representative of each of the 8 groundwater management districts. It's also a representative of each of the 8 counties. And we have one representative from the Colorado Groundwater Commission. So to make up the 17 people. And since I've been president, I've really strived to have the decision-making done on committee levels. We have a lot of committees, and the committees may be busy for a season and then not busy for a season, but I want the decisions to be made with a group of people that are really well informed about what the decisions they're making, make recommendations to the whole board, because we can't tie down the whole board with every decision. So we make the sausage with these committees, and every board member's on 3 or 4 committees, so it's not like they only have one committee.
So our task for the Republican River District is to assist with compact compliance, but like Rod said earlier, we have no jurisdictional authority. But we do believe that conservation is a part of what our task is. And as Rod mentioned earlier, groundwater districts do have authority, but the problem is they don't have any money to enforce those more restrictive rules. So that is a problem. And then at the same time, it forces us to work together as a team to try and find a way to get through all of this.
I like to say that the RWCD has money but no authority. The groundwater management districts have authority but no money.
Yeah.
So, and the two conflict, but at the same time, we have to work together to accomplish the needs of the basin. And it's a difficult challenge, different than Nebraska or Kansas, but that's what we have to deal with.
Yep. So Colorado must be in compliance in a 2-way test. The basin as a whole, and then each tributary has to stand on its own. So on the South Fork, back in 2011, our former state engineer, Dick Wolf, had to call for the Bureau of Reclamation to drain Bonnie Dam because it was the answer on how we could get into compliance on the South Fork. And so regrettably, this was a very tough decision. This was our only water recreation in this area. Rod and I both learned how to water ski. When in our teen out here on this body of water, we just loved coming here, but this was the only thing that we could do to be able to keep our economy going and be able to continue with irrigated ag. So in 2012, in the fall, I took this picture. You can see it was completely dry. There was no dead pool, and you can see it didn't take long for the phreatophytes to start moving in. And so because there was no dead pool, this is just like a sponge. And there's a lot of, like I said, phreatophytes, Russian olives, tamarisk that have grown into that area. And so to try and get stream flow restored, Rod and I are on the South Fork Republican Restoration Coalition Board. And together, working with our state, we've been able to procure some funds to look at what can we do to restore stream flow through the Bonnie Dam Reservoir. And you can see we have a picture here of Governor Polis that came out and visited the area, and our Commissioner of Ag, Kate Greenberg, was with him. There's several board members here. Senator Pelton was with us, and Commissioner from Kit Carson County, Dave Horning, and several board members are there. Rod and I gave a tour a couple of falls ago to a group that came out. Kelly Romero Heaney was with us, and so was Bob Sakata, Nate Pearson, and Jennifer. And we took them around and showed them the basin, but especially these pictures were taken at Bonnie, trying to let them understand we've got a big problem, we need some help, we want to restore stream flow, and it goes towards compact compliance. On the Arickaree, we're usually in compliance on that reservoir or that tributary because there's very limited water.
So on the North Fork, I mentioned a loan that we procured to put in the compact compliance pipeline. It was a $60 million project to buy the water rights, get the easements, build a line, and we use that line to augment our compact demands. And that's all in the North Fork. So in the off season, this is a picture of the well field. We had 58 wells that we procured. We've added some more wells to it since then, but we have 8 wells that have been renovated to deliver high capacity to a collection tank and deliver down to the Republican in the off season, usually from maybe October through May, in that general time frame.
And to me, it's very bittersweet. I mean, when you can see this water flowing through the outfall structure and down to the river, this is beautiful, pure, clean water, and it's very bittersweet to watch it flow, because I know because of this huge undertaking, we're allowing our area to continue to benefit from irrigated agriculture. At the same time, it's very bittersweet because this is such pure water.
Yeah,
that's
let me
needed.
add to that too, Deb. Out here in the basin, when I talk to just regular citizens, they are so frustrated that we're pumping pure pristine water to go down the river. And I sit there and say, I get you, I get it. You know, it makes you crazy that we have to deliver water, but it's our only solution to stay in compact compliance. The alternative is much more dire. So this is what our solution is.
Yeah.
Okay, so our deliveries from the compact, they started in 2014, and Colorado was saying we want 100% credit for the water that we augment to the stream. As I said earlier, the North Fork actually shows 22%. So the downstream state said, well, you get 22% of that water you deliver. And Colorado says, no, we're going to pump water out of the aquifer and deliver 100%. So they went round and round, and in 2016, they finally agreed and approved a resolution saying, we'll give you 100% credit if you can get us some water in the South Fork or something that represents water. And so that's where the South Fork focus zone came into play, that blue highlighted area. They said, yeah, we know those tests that Deb had talked about earlier, you're meeting the statewide test by delivering enough water on the North Fork, but we need some water in the South Fork. So they agreed in that resolution, if you retire 25,000 acres by 2029, we will consider that you are in compliance on the North Fork and the statewide test. So that's the overall view of what we've got to do by 2029. And so we've got programs we're going to talk about here a little bit, that where we are in that goal of 25,000 acres.
So you can see on this in the lower right that we had to have 10,000 acres retired by the end of 2024. Currently, we have over 11,684 acres retired through the programs. So we are ahead of schedule. I'm very proud of that, but we still have a long ways to go. And so I also wanted to point out that you know, we understood that we were going to have to start offering more dollars to get people into these programs.
That's right. And so I'm proud of the fact that up until 2022, we were self-funded almost completely. We had some low interest loans, but we had funded ourselves. And so we had assessed ourselves fees, started at a $550, went to $1,450. And in order to buy or buy water rights on that South Fork, we've increased our fees to $30 an acre. So you can see there how the increased fees to the different irrigators, what the impact is. And so, but even with that, that still wasn't enough to get us to the point where we could retire that many acres in the time frame we had to retire them. And so we went ahead and went outside to find some extra funding. So in 2022, we found a couple of very, very cooperative legislators, and we sponsored Senate Bill 2228, and that bill allowed Colorado. We strove to attain some of the ARPA money from the federal government through Colorado, $30 million to help us retire acres in the South Fork. And we got that bill through unanimously, bipartisan, all the way through. That is almost unheard of this time in this day and age. But anyhow, we were really proud of that. So we had $30 million to add to our $30 an acre, which turns out to be at about a $15 million budget. So we've got a pretty good copper to deal with this South Fork focus zone, and Deb's going to explain how we went ahead and allocated that.
So like Rod said, we've got 3 different programs that we're offering throughout the basin. And the FSA CREP contracts that we have, those rates are set by FSA by each county, but NRCS has one rate that goes throughout the basin. And with the added dollars that we had from doubling the fee on the backs of all of the farmers that pay a irrigated water use fee, and with the ARPA funds that Rod talked about, we were able to increase the rates that were paid for the South Fork focus zone, where, as Justin said, you do have the state land board does have some irrigated land in that area. And you can see what the rates are. In CREP, you have to plant it back to, I'll go back to this picture, you have to plant it to grass, leave it in grass for 15 years, but you do receive payments every year. EQIP is where you can be able to dryland farm it. It's a 5-year contract, and then RAMP is the only program that we offer. We only offer it in the South Fork focus zone. If you are inside that zone, you also receive an incentive contract from the state and CWCB, paying $200 for the first 20,000 acres that have been retired. And I want to show you what we've been able to do with those programs. With the CREP program, where you plant it to grass and leave it in grass for 15 years, we've been able to save over 33,000 acre feet of water with this program. And Republican River District, and we're only funded without the addition of the ARPA funds, we're funded completely by the water use fee that we assess on the irrigated acres and on commercial and municipal wells. So we've spent almost 12.5 million in the retirement of acres through their CREP program. And EQIP, again, that's where you can dryland farm it. We've saved over almost 33 million acre feet of water, and 33,000, sorry. You know, the numbers, I just added a few too many zeros, but 32.6 thousand acre feet of water has been saved through EQIP. And we've spent over 15 million for the retirement of those acres. You can see with CREP, we've had 2 different programs working with FSA, and NRCS, we've had multiple programs that we've used to be so successful. So the ARPA funds that Rod mentioned earlier, you can see here that we had the 29.5 million available to us. There's going to be some dollars that the state will need for being able to administer this program. But at any rate, we've already committed under contracts. We've got over 80% of those total dollars. And I project by the May or June, we will have committed, encumbered all of those funds that are available to us. So we're very grateful for that. And then the CWCB grant that I mentioned earlier, we have received $4 million for the incentive contracts. And we're over our first half of those dollars. That goes to $200 for the first 20,000 acres retired.
So I just want to add on a little bit there, Deb, that it took a while to get to these levels where we knew people would participate. And it was finding the so-called sweet spot. And when we got to these numbers, we finally got traction. People came to the door, and we've been very, very flexible. You can see there's a lot of programs there, but maybe it's a little complex, but we're being as flexible as we can to make every program that we can make for every situation out there. We're listening to them. How can we bring a program to you that's customized to what your needs are? So we're just being as flexible as we can to get as many acres as we can. This slide's talking about Kevin Ryan, our recently retired state engineer. I think it comes down to we need to know what's at stake if we fail. And so we asked Engineer Ryan to tell us, if we don't succeed at this, retiring the 25,000 acres, what will happen? And he said, we're going to shut off all the wells. We have no choice. And so we have this audio that we're going to share with you that his words, this is what he has to do.
Guys, I think when you shared your screen, you may not have connected the audio. We're not hearing anything on our end.
Oh, gosh, I wish you could have. I'm sorry that you couldn't hear it. But it was our state engineer that was explaining in his own words. If we don't reach the compliance with the 25,000 acres, he will be forced to curtail all water diversions in our basin. So that from north to south, east to west, everyone will be under our curtailment rules if we're not successful in getting those 25,000 acres. I apologize, you couldn't hear it in his words, but he had sent out a letter that we sent out to all well owners, landowners in the basin, letting them know that we've got to get these 25,000 acres retired. And if not, there's some very dire consequences if we don't.
And we don't look at Kevin Ryan or the state engineer ever as an enemy. They're doing their job and we have to work with them. And then we've developed a very good relationship with Dick Wolf, Kevin Ryan. I hope that our next engineer will have the same relationship with, because we're all trying to solve the same problem. Here we're talking about another bill that we're looking at. It's what's at stake. If we shut off the water, as Kevin Ryan suggested, we may have to if we don't comply. What's at stake? And so we don't really know. It's billions of dollars. Well, how many billions of dollars? So we have Representatives Holtorf and McCormick in this picture, that bipartisan sponsorship of Senate bill or House Bill 1220, I believe.
Yes.
And it's a bill that funds a study, an economic study through the Colorado Water Center.
Yep.
And they're going to spend some time over the next few years finding out the economic impact of not only to the basin, but to Colorado, but to the tri-state area if we lose this economic engine in this area. So that bill was passed this last session. Governor Polis came out in the summertime on a very wet day and signed the bill out in the wheat field, and that was kind of cool. So anyhow, we have very good relationships at the State House, and we want to maintain those relationships going forward.
And you don't see a rainy day in Northeast Colorado very often, but in June, we sure did last year. So like Rod said, the Colorado Water Center is where the study is being completed. And CSU, we have two professors, Dr. Jordan Sutter and Dr. Dale Manning, are handling this study for us. We're very anxious to hear how things are going so far. Both of these young gentlemen have done studies in our area, and so they are going to have their study completed by the end of next year, and they'll start reporting to the state legislature and some of the committees by early 2026.
So as I said, what kind of economic impact are we having? We know it's big. You can see from this graph the impact for the different commodities in this area. So, but we want to know, by the time you figure the revolving dollars and the dollars that are reinvested for value added, what is that impact going to be?
And you can see here that our basin is some of the top producing counties in our state. So it's very vital that we continue having irrigated agriculture, not only for our basin, but for our state entirety.
So as we go forward, we are looking at ways to manage our water. We don't want to lose our high value crops that maybe take some more water, but at the same time, we want to find crops that maybe can use deficit irrigation for alternative crops. So we're open to both, but the idea being we need to restrict water. And if you're going to need the water, you're going to pay for the water. That's kind of what we're looking at right now, but it's going to be a transition into a new, hopefully non-traditional ag maybe. So, and we don't know what that's going to exactly look like.
So the one thing is that no matter what, if you live in our basin, your life is touched by irrigated ag. Several years ago, before I took this job, I was on an ambulance service in Burlington, and we were funded by the county, and the county received the dollars through the irrigated ag taxes. And so my husband has been a volunteer fireman in this area for 30 years. And we know that no matter what you do, if you live in the towns or if you work on the farms, you're touched by irrigated agriculture. And so we know our communities are vital, and that we've got to find ways to continue to be able to have irrigated ag, but we've got to also have our conservation to elongate our aquifer.
So Republican River, we do a lot of things. We're dealing with all these things almost all the time. These bullets, these bubbles. So it's, we continue to expand our influence. We continue to be more and more responsible for the things that have to happen in our community. And I think I want to relate that Republican River is nobody's enemy. We're working for the whole basin. And you had said earlier that you have 6,300 acres of irrigated ground. Well, we're working for you too. So there's no doubt that we all have to succeed together. And no matter what we do, for some of us, it impacts more personally if we're having some action in your area. But the idea being, we want the greater good for all.
And we so much appreciate this opportunity. And Justin Bieber and Bierry, Justin Bierry and Wilbur Stryker came out and visited with us. And we so much appreciate the communication and interaction between the State Land Board and the Republican River District.
Since taking on this role as chairman or president, I've been up and down multiple times throughout the whole basin. And the one common denominator is you sit down and you talk to the folks in the communities, and they say, by golly, this is the best community in all of the world. We are unique. And you know what? I walk away and say, man, how can we have so many best unique communities in our basin? And I got to thinking, they're all right. They are absolutely correct. They are the best communities. Rural America, I really think small town rural America has a value system and a quality that you just don't find anywhere else. Even though everybody's proud of their schools and everything else, I think the biggest difference of these communities really is the colors of our athletic program jerseys on Friday night. That's probably the biggest difference. But outside of that, we all have so many common denominators to work together for. So I think we've worked on trying to bring a certain a unity to the basin, and I think we've largely succeeded. Every day there's challenges, but I think the people out here understand water, and water is a part of every conversation almost now, even on Main Street. It's not just with the growers, and we need to continue that process of education. That's why we're here today, to try to let you guys know what we're about and what we're trying to do. We are representing everybody out here, and every day we come to work and we say, okay, what do we need to do today?
Exactly. And why do we do it? Why do we put in the extra effort? It's because of these pictures. It's because of our young people that are coming back, and the values that we are trying to instill in them. And it's because of the successful efforts of our district and partner organizations, just like the State Land Board and CWCB and the Division of Water Resources, because we've all worked together so well. The residents of the Northern High Plains Basin continue to thrive, and we just appreciate every opportunity we get to share our story. And we're here to answer questions if anyone has any.
This is Commissioner Chavez. And I did take on the tour with Justin last year, I believe, and heard you guys speak. It was really informative, and what you guys, and it's a beautiful part of the world. For the goal of the 25,000 acres, is there enough funding from the federal government to meet that goal? And the
You know,
state?
good question, good question. And the answer is, we only have access to it for a very short, limited period of time. We have to have all of those funds encumbered under contract before August 15th, 2024. So we only have access to it for a short period of time, and we're going to need some additional funding as we go forward to try and help us get past that goal. I'm hoping that we'll have several more thousand acres retired by the time we get to that. We will encumber all of those funds so that they stay here in the basin and help us get towards our goal. But the problem is, we're going to have a shortfall in that we aren't going to have the additional funds to help us get completely to the end of 2029.
Yeah, even though we increased the fee, over doubled the fee to get to the $15 million budget, that and alone won't fund all the projects. Certainly some of that money is going to go to funding South Fork Focus Zone, but we're really going to be looking at some more outside funding to get to our goal. That's where we think. We know, I can't tell you exactly how that's going to play out, but we're anticipating that.
What you'll be, I mean, I believe Justin will be asking us at some point this year, do we want to have he has 500 acres, I guess that's 3 pivots more or less, be a part of that program. So, and that's, I guess my question is there money for our 500 acres if we go that direction?
Yes, it's available for all of those acres. If you sign up in time, because the EQIP is only available, they have certain timeframes. I think that they're looking at probably March, and CREP, you can apply for it, but we need to get paperwork going fairly quickly on it. And then if the program that would be best for your acres would be RAMP, that's a program that's strictly through the Republican River District, and we can work with you very quickly on getting that into. So it's not that I'm not trying to push you, but I'm just telling you that time is getting short because we don't have access to those funds very long.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, the one issue that we have, it's my understanding is that we cannot take money from the federal government. So
that's correct.
These can.
Right. And you have retired one of your wells through the CREP program with your leasee. There has been one, and that was acres, thank you very much, that were in the South Fork Focus Zone. So those did help us towards our goals of retiring our 25,000 acres.
And I just wanted to add that our negotiating committee right now has this issue as a top priority to say, what can we figure out to be able to procure some more water in the South Fork Focus Zone or even in the well field. So it's on their radar saying, okay, how can we be creative? What can we do to maybe satisfy both parties?
Thank you.
And I see Commissioner Frobe's hand is up.
Thank you, Commissioner Scanlon. Thank you for the informative presentation. I guess my question is sort of in the big picture and thinking about any possible parallels with the Colorado River system. At what point is there the opportunity for, a substantial restructure of this compact, given that it was done in 42, given climate change considerations, all these other things? Anyway, I'll leave it there. So what are the prospects or considerations for trying to generate something like that with the other two parties?
Well, understand this compact was signed by the 3 states. And
Right.
the only time you would open up a compact is if all 3 states agreed to open the compact. So
Right.
there's got to be something in it for everybody. Otherwise, they'll never open it up. So that's really not in our purview. We would love to see some things addressed in the compact, but unless Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado all think there's something in it for them, they're not going to do it. So we have to go forward status quo. And if something would open up, we would be more than happy to be involved in that discussion, but we can't assume that that's going to happen.
And trust me, we have all struggled with that question. Why can't we open up that compact and look at it? But as you know, sometimes when you open a compact, the upstream states are the ones who lose the most. So it's certainly something that we would love to see. And I think someday, maybe when our kids are in these positions, they'll take a look at it. But right now, in our foreseeable future, it doesn't look like it. And I certainly wish we could.
Yeah, the downstream states are not gonna give up anything,
No,
if they're gonna open it up, or they're not gonna be perceived to give up anything.
no.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add my thanks for the presentation. Really helpful, very informative. And more to come, obviously, Justin, as we continue this conversation down the road.
Yeah, it looks like Commissioner Heath might have her hand up.
Commissioner Heath, did you want to say something?
And Bill, I see your hand now, or was that? No, okay, Commissioner Heath? Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm scrolling to find people.
Thanks. I agree. This was very informative and I appreciate the presentation. It really helps us for context. I have two questions. One is basic and it is, I just need to better understand when an agricultural producer agrees to retire a portion of their use, is that a one-time payment?
No, good question. So if you decide to go into, like, say, the CREP program, it's a permanent retirement of your irrigated water right. So you can no longer use that well for irrigation, but you would receive a payment over 15 years from the federal government and from the Republican River District. And then if you went into the EQIP program where you can dryland farm, that is a 5-year contract, and you would receive payments over a 5-year period of time from both NRCS and the Republicans. So those payments that I showed you on that screen, that was what you would receive total for those contracts over either a 5-year or 15-year term.
So like what percent, for example, from the federal government vis-a-vis the or RWDC, what percent? And you mentioned that you need to spend at least a part of the ARPA by the 15th of August. And I mean, is it 50-50 or what's the percentage of payout?
Good question. FSA pays more federal dollars towards those contracts. And I would say that's probably right now on those dollars in the South Fork, I would say they probably pay a third of the total of the contract. Republican River District has a portion, and then we use a portion of the ARPA funds towards those payments also. And then when we look at EQIP, NRCS, the federal agency, probably pays more, like maybe a fifth of the contract. They're increasing every year, but the federal dollars that we can receive is quite a bit lower for NRCS than it is for FSA. So it falls on the backs of our producers and our abilities to go and get additional funds to be able to get these acres retired, because Commissioner Heath, when we increased those payments, boy, that really increased the interest. We knew, as Rod said, we hit the sweet spot when we had people that were truly interested in permanently retiring their wells. And this is something that's difficult, not only for them business-wise, but my grandfather drilled that well. This has always been in our family, and to give up that irrigation water right is a very difficult decision for them to make, no matter what your status. So the Republican River District, by and large, we pay for most of the conservation within our boundary, but we so much appreciate the federal dollars that help to come in, and especially the ARPA funds that our state legislature allowed us to have.
And I'd probably like to accent the fact that the South Fork focus zone is the priority, but all of the irrigators are really paying into this pot. And then we realize that we don't qualify for these programs that are accelerated. but we are still accountable for paying for them. So everybody outside of that South Fork Focus Zone is sending money to the South Fork Focus Zone for us to comply. And that's been a bit of a challenge for us to get people to get on board with that. But I think we've done a pretty good job where they realize what's at stake and they're okay with that money being sent to that area to retire water.
I'm sorry, I just need a little more basic education, I guess.
That's fine.
When those irrigation water rights are retired, do they keep the basic water right and they just give up the right to irrigate?
They can, yes, they can. If they choose to, if they'd like to use the structure, the hole in the ground, the well, if they'd like to use that for domestic or livestock use, then we fill out the paperwork and we can help them apply for that. And most of them do need a well there for livestock use, or perhaps someday sell that portion of ground and there's a domestic water right there. So they have the ability to do that. Most of them do choose, Commissioner Heath, to go ahead and apply for a small capacity water right, but knowing that they permanently will never be able to irrigate from the irrigation well or irrigate that property into perpetuity. That's just part of how we're conserving water for livestock and for domestic use.
Thank you so much. And here's my final question. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
no.
interested in this. We've all heard a good bit about Nebraska's desire to move in on Colorado water. Can you just speak to that kind of issue?
Well, that's not in our basin, but we have a fairly good awareness of it. You're talking about the Sedgwick diversion?
Right.
Yeah. Nebraska has a water right. And I think I would say this off the record. I wouldn't want anybody to quote me as an authority. But
Well, this is a public record. Just keep that in mind.
Okay, well, I don't want to have to testify on this, but Nebraska has been getting free water every year. But as Colorado finds ways to store that water and keep that water from flowing freely across the border, Nebraska is trying to figure out how they can keep that water that they've had in the past as free water. And so they're looking at this diversion that they actually have a legal right to. And it's going to be a long process, but we'll see how it plays out.
Thank you.
All right, very good. I'll just kind of try to wrap things up, Commissioner Scanlon. So thank you. Hopefully this was helpful. I think it was. And as commissioners, as you probably figured out, the decisions that staff will be bringing to you is related to the South Fork Focus Zone and the irrigated properties that the land board holds within that South Fork Focus Zone, as well as a potential long-term lease with the district, providing water into their compact compliance pipeline. Any potential lease or, well, I guess a disposition, but I think we're trying to guide it towards a lease. That lease will be very lengthy. And it would come in front of the board as a board decision because it would be outside of staff's authority under policy. And I want to pause just briefly to acknowledge a question that Commissioner Heath asked last month in terms of lease lengths. Commissioner Heath, staff heard the question and about lease length terms, and we're preparing an information item to take a deeper dive into those length of terms. So with that, I know you bet. I know we're probably running short on time here, so turn it back over to Commissioner Scanlon. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Again, thanks for the presentation. Really helpful grounding and for our future conversations. I'm going to move us forward to our final action items, and we are at tab 3 in the board packet with item A, solid mineral lease, Custer County, and Ben will be joining us. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, commissioners. I was struggling there to find my mute button. Just to share my screen and see what we can do here. Does everyone see my slides in the way you were expecting to?
Yes.
Excellent.
Nice job.
Thanks. Thanks. All right, good morning, commissioners. As you know, but for the record, my name is Ben Teschner and I'm the Solid Minerals Manager. I'm here to request approval for a solid minerals lease in Custer County. And the photo in front of you is the property in question, and be standing, sort of loosely where the mine would be looking south along the property. Oops, let's try again. There we go. This is kind of an exciting opportunity because what we're looking for on this property, or what we believe we have here, is a rhyolite resource. And rhyolite is a construction material for the new energy economy. And this is sort of a concept, as you know, that I've been talking about for the last couple of years, about how as part of our solid minerals business plan, we want to be transitioning into these commodities that are important for how our new economy is going to be working, as we're thinking more about carbon emissions and climate change and those sorts of things. The photo in front of you is an existing rhyolite lease that's located only about a mile north, or existing rhyolite mine, excuse me, that's located on deeded ground only about a mile north of the state land board lease area. And you can see that this is a property where, in this case, Colorado Quarries, the applicant for our lease, is mining this property. And you can see basically the full extent of this operation in the photo. And you can also see it's a little bit difficult, perhaps virtually, but there are some animals here in the foreground. And these are some cattle that are grazing this area while the mining operation is taking place. So I want to talk about first, who is Colorado Quarries? They are the applicant for this lease. And Colorado Quarries is a company that has a long history in Colorado, and nearly 100 years, according to their website. And it's a company that's provided construction materials, landscape aggregates, a myriad of quarried materials that we use all the time in our construction and, frankly, daily lives here in Colorado as we build things and so forth. The company is especially proud also that they were one of the suppliers of the material that helped build the really iconic chapel up at the Air Force Academy. All right, so this is a company with a long and storied history in our state, and they primarily operate in the Fremont, Custer, kind of south central Colorado market. The photo at the bottom here is that same mine that I showed in that other picture, and this is a look at the working face, and you can see perhaps sort of in the central left of the photo is the sort of pale green rock, which is the rhyolite itself. So what is rhyolite, right? This is kind of the big question. I teased it a little bit as this new energy economy material. But again, what seems to come up a lot recently in my business line is it seems to all be about cement. And so as we've talked about in the past, the basic process for making Portland cement is taking limestone, running it through a cement manufacturing facility, and you get cement out the other end. And obviously it's a little more complicated than that, but for the purposes of this discussion, what's important is when you do that, you chemically emit carbon dioxide. And as part of that process, part about thinking about cement manufacturing, manufacturers have realized that we can reduce the amount of limestone that we need and thus reduce the amount of CO2 emitted by adding what's called a natural pozzolan. And this is sort of the pozzolan is like the glue, right, that helps cement stick together. And there are some, sort of natural versions of this that we can add that we don't need to kick off that CO2 molecule. And one of those is fly ash. Fly ash is, what comes from coal-fired power plants primarily. And this is a natural positive and one that cement manufacturers have been adding to cement for quite some time. And in addition to reducing the CO2 output, it also helps make the cement stronger. So this is a really cool win-win for everyone. The problem now is that fly ash is a shrinking supply because we are increasingly shutting down coal-fired power plants and moving to other energy generating technologies. And so cement manufacturers are now looking for, well, what can we add as this natural positive to replace this fly ash that's recently going away? Enter rhyolite, right? And so rhyolite can serve a similar purpose in this process and by being that natural positive addition to cement manufacturing. So let's zoom in on this lease area specifically. This is will be a 640 acre section 36 lease in central Custer County. Some of the current things that are happening on this parcel already is the Colorado Quarries has an exploration lease on this property, and for the past 2 years they've had that lease and done work on the property to confirm that in fact the rhyolite does exist there, and they now have good reason to believe that this property can support a mine, which is why this is being brought to you today. In addition to that, we have a combination ag and rec lessee named Michael Robinson, who holds the grazing and hunting leases on this property. As part of staff's process, when we consider any solid minerals mining lease like this, is we reach out to the ag lessee, which I did with Michael Robinson, and got comments back from him. Mr. Robinson expressed that he believed that the mining would be incompatible with the grazing and hunting leases he holds. And I've included his full comments in your board packet for you to consider. Staff disagrees with that assessment, and I'll talk more about why that is as we continue. Zooming in kind of on the map area of this property, on the upper left is the town of Westcliff and Silvercliff, just a little in central Custer County. And about 5 or 6 miles to the southeast here is the State Land Board Section 36 and the lease area. Want to highlight a couple other sort of things that are on this map that I think are important. The area where the rhyolite is most concentrated is sort of in the central, sort of north central part of the property, and that's important because being up in that area, staff have believe that this location, it helps make this especially compatible with the grazing and other activities that are going on the property. The mine that I showed you in the photo that I said was located about a mile north, the other Colorado Quarries mine is right here circled in orange. You can see kind of the sort of tan, pale green disturbance area of that mine, and we'd be expecting something similar in scale on the State Land Board section. And currently, the Colorado Quarries mine accesses their existing quarry through approximately the route shown here in orange. And Colorado Quarries has worked out an agreement to access our parcel for their exploration work through their exploration lease that they currently hold through approximately the route that you see here in the dashed orange line. That line crosses over from deeded ground that's owned by Colorado Quarries. That's where their mine is located. Crosses over the Silver Cliff Ranch property, who holds the vast majority of the property, kind of in sort of north and west of the state land board section. Mr. Robinson, the grazing and grazing and hunting lessee, owns approximately 60 acres down here, adjacent to the state land board section between Rosita Road and the state land board section. Let's talk a little bit about what we would expect from revenue from this property or from this lease. Our standard rental rate for a mining lease like this is $5 an acre, which results in $3,200 a year. But as the board is aware, the solid minerals revenue is really generated from royalties when production occurs. And so we'd be looking at a royalty of $3 per ton or 10% of gross sales. This number, obviously rhyolite is a new commodity for our program for the state land board. And so this number comes from comparing those with other state land boards in Utah, Texas, and I believe Arizona. And two of which had leases for similar, and Wyoming, two of which had similar leases. And this is about what we found they were charging. These state our leases of this type include an advanced minimum royalty. This is a minimum amount of royalty that the lessee pays each year, and this ensures that the state land board receives revenue even if there are delays in the project or something starts to go wrong for some reason. It also ensures that or encourages the lessee to mine our property, and then when that becomes less economic, to reclaim and move on, right? And that's a big goal always of our solid minerals program is to mine, be productive, reclaim, and move the property to its next beneficial use. The AMR would kick in year 3. The reason for that is we want to give the lessee a little bit of time to go through the permitting process and actually begin production before we impose that financial burden. So this results in a minimum revenue of $3,200 a year for years 1 and 2, and then a minimum revenue of over $100,000 a year in years 3 and beyond. Obviously, we're hoping to earn more than the minimum revenue here, and we anticipate, based on Colorado Quarries projections of what they think this mine would produce, between $250,000 and $500,000 a year, resulting in $2 to $4 million in total revenue for the next decade. With all of solid minerals leases, these activities have impacts, and these are ones that are always important to consider. And as part of staff's process, when considering these leases, we reach out to Colorado Works Wildlife, our other business line managers of the state land board, and ask about what these impacts might be and what these stipulations we can put in to help mitigate those impacts. This is a big game winter range. And as a result, there's a stipulation in this lease that initial disturbance would need to occur between April 1 and November 31, right? And so this limits the impacts on big game move down into maybe this immediate area in winter, and they would be sort of undisturbed in that area during that winter time, right? So then if they migrate away and come back later, they would be able to see that this is impact here prior to deciding if they're going to set up. Raptors are a known commodity in this area, and so survey for raptors is what would be required prior to initial disturbance and compliance with CPW timing restrictions and setbacks. And then CPW noted that although there are no major waterways on this property, that the drainages do drain into streams and rivers that are important for sport fish. And so we include in this a 200-foot setback from water that if they from named waterways. So if they the lessee wants to disturb in that within that buffer zone, they come back to staff and we work with CPW or whomever to ensure that the appropriate precautions are being taken. I thought it was also important to highlight in this process something that I've not highlighted much when we've talked about these leases in the past. But I thought this was a good time to remind the board a little bit about our process that isn't written into the lease as specific stipulations exactly, but is our standard our standard leasing process, our standard leasing obligations from all of our solid waste states. One is that they always have to go through state and local permitting, including the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety, who will hold a bond against reclamation of the property at the end. And also Custer County, who gets to weigh as well through special use permits or conditional use permits, depending on how they choose to regulate the mining activity. The Colorado Quarries is very familiar with Custer County and with DRMS, as they are an operator of multiple mine sites in Custer County and the state as a whole. Staff also reviewed all mine plans prior to disturbance, right? And so if this lease is approved and we go ahead and sign it, that does not mean that suddenly the lessee goes out and just does things without any additional staff oversight. As a condition of all of our leases, staff review those plans, ensure that they're in compliance with the stipulations that we're expecting, helps facilitate layered leasing, right? So I've already communicated, for example, to Colorado Quarries that I expect access roads and things to follow property boundaries rather than sort of going through the middle. And so this is something that I work with all of our lessees on as we work to develop mine plans. And this is, the overall goal of this, of course, is to protect our property as an asset. So, of course, staff is recommending that you approve this lease. And to summarize, we believe this it has strong revenue potential from a parcel that has limited access. I didn't name it specifically in the presentation, but this is a parcel that is surrounded by private property. And so access is difficult. And Colorado Quarries has secured access for exploration, anticipates that they will also be able to secure access for mining. We believe that our leasing process and the steps we've included in the lease that are specific to this lease mitigate the negative impacts on property, on wildlife, on other users. We believe this has a high likelihood of layered leasing success because of its location and because of the other activities on the property. And this achieves or moves toward one of the big solid minerals business plan goals of leasing for commodities, high value commodities that are part of this new energy economy. I've included the board order here for your convenience. And I'd like to note also that, of course, I'm here to take any questions. I also believe that Mr. Bill Tezak from Colorado Quarries is on the meeting as well, and I think he is available to take questions if you have any.
Terrific, thank you. Commissioner Frobe, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Ben, for the presentation. I have a couple of different questions, and One, I apologize if I did not retain all of the standard leasing, solid minerals leasing policy provisions in my head, but I guess my key question here is the exploration permit was already issued prior to me coming on the board, actually, I think. And why is this coming to the board? How does this fall outside of the normal parameters? Or have we just not put the solid mineral parameters in place yet for sort of standard leasing procedures?
Let me answer that the way I think what you're asking is, can I talk a little more about how our standard leasing process of solid minerals and how this fits into it? Is that
No, I guess
correct?
I'm wondering why, what makes this coming to the board to approve the lease?
Gotcha.
Opposed to
Okay.
Staff approving the lease.
Gotcha. So in the solid minerals policy, staff is authorized to issue exploration leases for up to 2 years. And so the purpose of that is to give the exploration activity, in addition to being regulated by DRMS, is relatively low impact on properties. And so the board has said to staff, we'll give you the authorization to issue those exploration leases, but we don't want you to be issuing mining leases. We want you to be bringing those mining leases to the
So
board.
every solid mining lease will come to the board.
Correct. Before there is any mine property, that comes to the board. The purpose of issuing the exploration leases is many of them don't result in a viable mine or project, right? So there's a relatively low impact activity. The board has said, why don't you take care of that? And then when it's kind of serious, it's us and we can decide, right?
Okay.
So that's why we're seeing it today, because we've gotten to that point where Colorado Quarries and staff believe there's a viable mine here, and we're ready to move ahead with that process.
Thanks for clarifying that. I wasn't sure if I'd missed something. Then I didn't really see it stated, but is the term 10 years and are there renewal provisions?
Yes, so the term with the standard arrangement, again, per policy with solid minerals leases, is an initial term of 10 years. And then the lessee, if there's what's called a held by production clause, which allows which is effectively a lessee option to hold it for an additional 10 years, assuming the lease is producing and paying quantities, right? So if the lease is producing, they have the ability to hold it for another 10 years. Past that, then it gets a little more complicated, but assuming, once we get to 20 years, I can give you a little more on that, but there's some provisions in the policy as well that give staff and the board some ability to weigh in depending on what's going on.
Okay. And then to Mr. Robinson's fairly well articulated letter, I thought, do we imagine that the considerations of operations and mitigating those operations for the purposes of dark skies, tourism and recreation, that really those considerations are handled primarily at the county local level in the permitting process?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both being us, me, staff, right, and the county. I would say primarily this is something that we work through the county permitting process, and so they have the authority to regulate those types of things. In addition to that, right, we've put in expectations in some specific stipulations, but also, for example, communicated expectations to the lessee about, things like, as I said, the access roads, depending on, where those want to belong and things like that, that's my responsibility, right? To make sure that those are not running right through the middle of the property, right? That would be really disruptive, I think. But this is a fairly routine activity that I do as part of my job, looking at mine designs and how things are going and working with
Yeah.
district managers to make sure that these things are compatible.
Okay, and I would just like to request that a strong consideration or evaluation by you and the staff on this lease give consideration to limiting operations during the evening.
Okay.
Like the dark sky, I guess I would request that we look into the dark sky impacts and the people and residents impacts, as there always are on mining, but we've looked into the mitigation on wildlife and protections for water, and I just would like to add to that the protections for residents living in this rural area, especially the nighttime impacts with lights and noise.
Great. Can I actually, since Mr. Tezak is on the line, I know he has at least 2 quarries permitted in Custer County. Maybe you could address that briefly, Bill, about how that works in Custer County with your current operations.
I think that would be helpful, Ben.
He'll be coming online here any second.
This is where we play the Jeopardy music.
Mr. Tezak, if you can hear us, you're in control of your mic and camera at this point.
Bill, are you there? If you're there, we can't hear you. Looks like he's trying. We're still unable to hear you. Are there any other questions while Bill is working on that I might be able to address while Mr. Tezak is working on his technology?
Commissioner Heath?
Yes, Ben, thank you for that presentation. When you talk about staff review of the mining plans, does like the stewardship staff review like the comments from Colorado Parks and Wildlife and you know, I meant to ask this question on the golf course last month, but do the stewardship people review all the plans that come forward to the board?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the process, you know, getting a little inside baseball here, but the process that we go through is that I send out this request to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and I also send it out to our staff at the State Land Board, which includes our stewardship staff. And kind of in practice, what happens is depending on what comes back from our stewardship staff and our Parks and Wildlife folks, who my understanding is, I'm talking a little out of turn here because I don't want to speak for our stewardship staff, but they have a lot of access to a lot of similar information that they're using to help evaluate the lease. And so in this case, it didn't really come up, but I take those Parks and Wildlife STIPs, and these are pretty standard ones that we see a lot, that our stewardship staff has seen a lot. So when our stewardship staff, Parks and Wildlife, come back and are aligned, then that's usually enough to kind of move ahead. Occasionally, you see some divergence here, and that again, that did not happen in this case. But when that occurs, then we get everyone kind of the same and have a discussion about, okay, what makes sense here? What are the things that you saw that you didn't see or whatever? And again, that did not occur in this case, but that's kind of how the process works, functionally.
And so, excuse me, just following that. So essentially the comments that we see from Parks and Wildlife, like a big game winter area and the other kinds of issues, essentially, is it that our staff just notes that, or do you're saying?
Yeah,
that
yeah, good question. In all of our solid minerals leases, we have a section that's special stipulations. And so part of what feeds that section is the comments from Parks and Wildlife. So, for example, there's a stipulation that's related to big game, right? And so big game winter range, that then slots into the lease, right? And under 90% of situations, our standard, we've developed a stipulation for this, and our standard stipulation fits nicely to that, into the lease, and addresses the issue. In rare cases, again, not this lease, but in rare cases, things are more complicated, and so we need to draft some special language for some reason. But I will actually talk more about this in the coming. I'm not sure when it's scheduled. I don't think we've scheduled it yet. But the solid minerals policy is up for review this year, and so this is one of the things that I'll discuss in more detail as part of that policy review discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Have we resolved any of our tech issues?
Mr. Tezak, we see what I think is a wall coming from your camera, but it does appear that your camera and mic are open, but we cannot see or hear you. Oop.
Oh, something's happening.
Yeah.
Hmm?
That is a desk.
And running. Room. Commissioners, while we're waiting, I do want to point out that as I look at the board order here presented before you and in the packet, we've got a little bit of inconsistency with dates. Obviously, the meeting is January 10, and we will make sure that the board packet reflects that correctly. We would hope that your action would proceed with an acknowledgement that will make the changes as appropriate to the date. And the lease number as showing on the screen includes a 0 in the middle that it shouldn't. And I believe that is also repeated in the board order. So for detail's sake, we'll get those things cleaned up. But wanted to point out that they're just sort of scrivener's errors at this point.
My apologies, that was on me.
I think we are maybe not going to get Mr. Tezak at this point. I think, Ben, if you could share the concerns expressed by Commissioner Frobe and get a message or something back to us that talks about how they do manage, particularly some of the dark sky nighttime activity with noise kind of issues, that would be really helpful.
I can certainly do that.
Commissioner Frobe, would that work for you?
Yes.
And just to be clear, that's something I expect to put in the staff report. Does that
Perfect.
work for you?
Yep.
Great.
That'd be great. All right. And if by chance I'm curious what the answer is. If he can find a way to join before the end of the meeting, that'd be helpful. But I think we should move forward. If there is any other discussion from commissioners related to this agenda item and the board order in front of us? If not, I'll open this to public comment.
This is Commissioner Chavez. Are you recommending, and maybe it doesn't sound like it, that we postpone this until we can talk to the gentleman, and particularly about the concerns by the Robinson?
I was not suggesting that. That
Okay.
certainly could be on the table. I was suggesting we move forward and then have a report back from Ben on how those issues are both managed and mitigated by the company with their other sites.
And that's my concern.
I'm open to any path forward, but that was my inclination.
Yeah, and there was a lot of issues brought up by the Robinsons. It sounds like the access appears to be resolved, or that's not an issue, but the herd of elk, the dark skies that Commissioner Froh brought up, I think are.
Yep. Agreed.
One question, Ben, how deep would this mine be, or what we're looking for, what they're looking for? Is it 20 feet, 10 feet? Rip off the overburden, and then is the material readily accessible?
Yeah, this is a resource that's very close to surface. Let's see, I could back out of the presentation. We're talking about a resource that's on a scale of maybe tens of feet at max here, and with very little overburden. So the mining method here is to remove your topsoil, which is inches to maybe a couple feet, stockpile that, mine the rhyolite, and then replace the disturbed area with your topsoil, reseed, and reclaim that back to your habitat that it was prior to mining. And we're talking also about sort of a sub-horizontal resource here too. So not something that's going, really deep. We're talking about a flat-ish mining activity.
Thank you. That's helpful. Any other questions or comments from commissioners before we ask for public comment? I am not seeing any. Nick, if you want to ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to weigh in on this agenda item.
Yeah, members of the public, if you'd like to share some thoughts with the commissioners about this item in particular, use the raise hand feature and we'll bring you forward so that you can address the commissioners directly. No hands, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. We do have a board order in front of us. As noted by Nick, there's a couple of errors that would need to be remedied in a motion or recognized in a motion. And I'll open it up to the commissioners to see if anyone would like to put forward a motion. Well, I'm happy to. I'll go ahead and move the solid minerals lease as presented at our meeting today on January 10th, 2024 to approve the lease in Custer County with Colorado Quarries LLC as presented. And we will amend the lease number and the date that we see on our screen and in our packet. The board determines that the income from the proposed transaction can be reasonably anticipated to exceed the fiscal impact of such development. As noted in our presentation and with the order on the screen, the board delegates authority to the director to take appropriate action consistent with the board's decision. And do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Clark. We will call a vote. Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath?
No. And I want to just say here, I'm certainly not opposed to mining. But I believe that there are some areas that, first of all, with mining, once the resource is gone, it's gone. And I think the whole rural tourism and efforts that are being done in Custer County deserve support for the kind of work they're trying to do. And I must say that, plus the comments from Parks and Wildlife, convinced me that this is a special parcel, and therefore I'm going to vote no on this.
Thank you, and noted for the record, Commissioner Heath. Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Frobe?
Yes, with the understanding that the human impacts and community impacts that we've discussed will be addressed by the State Land Board staff on managing this lease.
So noted. The chair votes yes, that motion passes 4-0.
No.
Oh, or 4-1.
Yeah, right.
I have my math right, but not the accurate tally. All right, thank you, Ben, and I appreciate the commissioners' discussion and concerns on this. I think we're still, as you noted, Ben, going to be reviewing some of the policies that govern your work. And I particularly, Commissioner Frobe, some of the impacts that are more on our radar not now, such as light and noise and such. Noise has been there, but dark skies, I think we should absolutely be mindful of.
May I make,
Thank you.
Commissioner Commissioner Scanlon, may I make one more comment?
Sure.
The fact, which wasn't in the board packet, but the fact that there are 2 other operations of this nature in the same general area was an important factor in considering and balancing all of the needs and objectives in this decision.
Thank you, Commissioner Frobe. I had the same feeling. All right, we will move forward. Anything else? I'm sorry, did I cut someone off?
I was just going to say thank you, commissioners, and I look forward to providing you more information on the policies and how to govern this work, and also the specific dark skies impacts
Correct.
in your staff report.
All right, thank you so much, Ben. We are ready to move on to tab 4 with Nick. I think, Nick, this is our carryover from our last meeting.
Correct, Commissioner.
Okay.
You'll allow me a second to. I like the way Ben phrases it. Are you seeing that the way I intend it?
Yes, and we are.
Great. Thank you and good morning, Commissioners. Nick Massey, Assistant Director, to present a request for the spending of some investment and development funds to do some heavy lifting in royalty auditing. Most of the leases that we discuss with you or that we handle on a day-to-day basis prescribe exactly what payments should look like over the life of the lease. What's challenging about minerals leases is our operators tell us what they owe us because of production. And we have the task of needing to make sure that they are accurate in what they've told us. These leases are pretty complex. They require operating conditions to be met, calculations to be made over a variety of products coming out of the ground. And our partners need to trust us with some insider information about the details of the sales that they complete with the parties that they do business with down the line. So when we're talking about reporting of data to State Land Board, the State Land Board wants to know when wells, so we're specifically speaking about oil and gas, staff wants to know when wells are in production, about the mix of things coming out of the ground, because each of them carries a different royalty, or not necessarily a different royalty, but we do some different calculations based on different products sometimes. And we want to know what's going on in the field when it comes to all the different wells that we have on our leases. What the State Land Board requires of minerals payers is different from what the regulators require. I want to try to get in the habit of calling them the ECMC, the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. They tend to require a high, sort of a generic or high level amount of data. They want to know some general quantities and so that they can do their work. We require a lot more detail. I mentioned that we need to know details on the mix of things that are coming out of a well or out of a mine. It also makes us unique among royalty owners. Because we ask for so many details, that makes us, we're asking for lots of different data points from our operators compared to what the guy right next door expects from the operators for the minerals that they own. It's important that this data be very detailed because we need to make sure that the operators aren't taking deductions that are prohibited by our contract with them, maybe deductions that are prohibited by law in general, or some other governing agreement like a settlement agreement that we might have in place with an operator or a group of operators. Reporting, as it turns out to be a great filter to catch changes that are happening on the lease. We occasionally will get a payment from a different payer than we were getting last month on the same lease or the same well. So that may indicate that an assignment has been made. And generally our operators are pretty good about letting us know when they've assigned things, but we do like to catch them when they don't. And it's also important for us to know the general status of the well. Is it in production? Was it in production and maybe now it's been shut in? We just need to make sure that we are comfortable with all those things happening across the state. But sort of the unspoken piece of having data reported to us and us auditing it is that it motivates good compliance with our operators. We want our operators to understand clearly that we are a mineral owner that's paying attention. So the overall challenge of auditing and the data that we get with royalty payment is that it's pretty complicated. I would love it if it were simply just a matter of lining up a check with one number that was reported, but if I don't use it in another place, an example is we may get a report for 1 month of production from one operator that contains 3,000 lines of information. It's a lot of information, and auditing it helps us keep everything going in the right direction. We're currently staffed with 1 FTE, 1 full-time equivalent, to own our auditing program. With 1 FTE, we can manage a decent flow of planned audits. We can formulate who we want to audit over the course of a year, and we can apply our resource against that and get that work done. Or we can respond to changes happening in the industry with ad hoc auditing that steps outside of an overall plan. And over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of things that need to be audited in the moment because of bankruptcies, consolidation, and the regulatory enforcement activities that ECMC has been putting out into the marketplace. But we are struggling to do both. I don't often get to use the fiduciary duty slide in my presentations because it's assumed that that's what governs all of my work, but I bring it here because I want to point out a few things that led us to making this recommendation to the board. Staff are of the opinion that this is a good investment, not only in the work that needs to get done, but also in expanding the knowledge that we have as staff. The industry changes a lot, and being able to engage with subject matter experts who specialize in this kind of work lets us be especially current in the information or the practices and information that we use in our own auditing. Our internal auditing processes have been handed down from generation to generation of internal auditors. And for lack of a better word, they may have gone a little stale. So we would benefit from updating the things that we do and the way we ask for information and the places we find it. We have been fortunate in finding a potential partner in external auditing that is a known quantity in the industry. We had more than one of our business partners in oil and gas leasing suggest to us that Martindale was a great shop to talk to. We've had several conversations with them, and we come away from those conversations impressed with the depth of their knowledge and their planned, the way that they structure an audit plan, and the familiarity that they seem to already have with the operators that we work with the most, and even with Colorado's regulatory environment. Martindale happens to be located in Oklahoma City, and they do have a Denver presence. But I don't think that it puts them at any sort of disadvantage about Colorado's unique regulatory environment. I mentioned the volume of oil and gas data. It has been growing year over year. And as we set revenue records year over year with oil and gas royalty, the data that comes behind that is significant as well and growing. And we acknowledge that it would be a great project to point a third-party partner at. It probably goes without saying that audits help ensure that our trust beneficiaries are getting paid the fair amount that they're owed on the minerals that are coming out of their trust lands. And that it's a challenging job to oversee, again, because I mentioned the complications in how oil and gas works from our standpoint. In the past few years, audits, or in the past, it's more than a few years, but audits have occasionally come across seven-figure findings. I don't make any promises that this sort of engagement would deliver on that, but it's not impossible. And it isn't, the findings aren't necessarily the point. The point of the request is to make sure that we're doing good, that we're, I think, Commissioner Frobe, you've helped us cue into the concept of risk in the portfolio. And there is risk here, and we need some help in feeling better about the way we manage the risk. And part of what's going to happen in this engagement is that we are going to ask our partners to help us make sure that moving forward, we have a good handle on overall risk, and that the way we're proceeding with audit sampling and audit actually execution is making sure that our risks are mitigated, or at least, or not at least, they're mitigated, or some other good word that talks about feeling better about the risk. I'd like to suggest that I&D funds are an appropriate use, or this is an appropriate use for I&D funds in this project. I&D funds are supposed to result in improved value of the trust. And sort of academically, we value our minerals in our trust based on the revenue they generate. So in those instances where we can ensure that the revenue is maximized or correct, I should say, for what it should be, we are ensuring enhanced value to the trust. So obviously, my request is to ask for the board's support in spending I&D money. a pretty significant chunk potentially of IND money, $250,000. The request, as noted in the packet, is not committing those funds in their entirety to the project. It's spending over time, acknowledging that if by way of example, we were to audit every well with Civitas that on state trust lands, it could get near this number. But that's not necessarily how we'll proceed. But we would like the freedom to do that. I don't highlight Civitas, and we didn't make a point of having Civitas be our example in this project for any concerns that we might have as a royalty owner. Really, the ask surrounding Civitas is because it's a complicated organization. For the existing relationships that we've got with them, we've got 5 different operators in our past that have come together to become Civitas. And that represents many, many leases, and each of those leases represents many, many wells. So it's about as complicated an arrangement as we could pick from our portfolio. They happen to be a significant payer of royalty. And so we think by tackling Civitas specifically, that we'll get a lot of work done and add a lot of value to the trust. I want to acknowledge that we have been short-staffed. In the packet, I talk about how we've had some retirements happen right before COVID, one during COVID. And the challenge to onboard appropriate auditing staff is significant. And the timeline to onboard staff is significant. Were we to try to expand staff at this point to do this work with internal resources, we're looking usually at an 18-month lead time because of the way it would be a legislative request, and because that's the timing of legislative requests from the agencies that represent DNR. So I would like to put resources to work on this quickly, and I feel like we can do that effectively with an engagement with a third party. So all that being said, I would warmly welcome support in the form of a motion from you commissioners to get this project going.
This is Commissioner Chavez. Nick, the 250,000, is that for 2024, 2025, or what's the time frame of that, or is it unknown?
Depending on what our partner can handle in their calendar, it may extend out into 2025. Well, fiscal wise, it'll almost certainly straddle fiscal years. And because it's IND money, we don't have concern. There's not a concern about that money being unavailable after the fiscal year change. It's a ongoing encumbrance or ongoing appropriation.
And then just are they going to look backwards or just moving forward, or a little of both?
The primary ask at this point is a backwards looking exercise, because we have all that data already. Simultaneously, the desire is to ensure that we're building our audit program or strengthening our own audit program, so that as we move forward, because the data keeps coming, that we're doing it as best we can based on the new information that we've gleaned from the partnership.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Frobe?
Thank you. Actually, that was one of my questions too, that Commissioner Chavez asked, was how far does this money spread? And so I guess I am a believer in a consistent auditing process, particularly in this type of application. It helps everybody be on their game, our lessees as well as the land board. So I think this is a good way to go. I guess the thing I would offer is just what you mentioned, leveraging this experience to build structurally the most efficient auditing process moving forward in terms of data collection, analysis, and review. by internal staff, but not hesitating even in the future to continue to use third parties for this type of function makes a lot of sense to me. It's very hard to hire this and retain it inside the land board. So just my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Yeah, I really appreciate that input, Commissioner.
I will just echo Commissioner Frob's comments. I think it is hard to have internally, and I think this is a good use of our dollars. This is our biggest line of revenue, and I'm assuming, Nick, they'd also give recommendation to practices that we might consider using going forward. As
Yeah,
some of the work.
and I do have Ben Hickson from Martindale is listening along, and certainly, Ben, if you wanted to make any comments, you can. He's probably taking notes on things that I'm saying out of turn, but yeah, no, the part of the conversation to this point has been, it's a yes and, like, we've got a load of work for you to do, and we need your help to be doing our own work better.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the reaffirmation of that. And Ben raised his hand, so I'm going to promote him and.
Yep. Perfect.
And that process is taking longer than normal, but he is on his way up. Ben, you're in control of your mic and camera when you're ready.
Oh, hi. Sorry, guys. Took me a little bit to figure out how to become a panelist. I just wanted to comment on assisting you guys in making better processes. That's something that we encounter a lot. We have had similar projects where we're helping large organizations develop an audit program and develop processes to make sure that they are in control of the data that they're getting, that they understand that the data that they're getting. And we also like explaining, what does everything mean? Because our organization has a lot of industry experience. We're always going out in the field and touring gas plants and looking at drill sites and looking at production facilities. And as a group, as Martindale in general, we all love teaching that kind of stuff. Just because, yeah, I don't know. I go home to my wife or fiance and it kind of bores her. So whenever I have an audience that really wants to listen to what I talk about, it thrills me. So I'm 100% on board with making the Colorado State Land Board processes a lot more efficient, just to accomplish your goals. So far, everything that you guys have been talking about, that's stuff we do every day, and that's right up our alley.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's helpful.
Hey, no problem.
Thanks, Ben.
Any other comments from commissioners? And then I'll turn it back to you, Ben, or not Ben, Nick. I am not seeing any.
Yep. So members of the public, if you'd like to make comment about this action item in front of the board, please use that raise hand feature and I'll be happy to entertain that. Not seeing any raised hands, Commissioner.
All right, thank you. We do have a board order in front of us. Do we have a motion?
Commissioner Scanlon, I'm prepared to offer a motion. I want to just say before that, I think this is, first of all, it makes a lot of sense because of the degree of expertise the outside firm has. But I think it also is a question for all of us in that I have never believed that you should put in place rules or regulations that you weren't willing to spend the money to see if they're being honored, and that I'm always weighing that vis-a-vis the cost to do business, whether you're small or large. But in this case, the rules are in place, and therefore I think it's really in our best interest to make sure they're being followed. So I would put forth a motion to approve the I&D funds for royalty auditing board order as contained in our packet, and acknowledge that its use is for up to 250,000 from the Investment and Development Fund.
Thank you. And a second, Commissioner Clark. We will call a vote. Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Frobe,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, that passes 5-0.
Thanks, commissioners. I appreciate it. And we'll be happy to update you on progress as things move
Yeah.
on.
Yep, please do. That'd be terrific. All right, we are going to move on to tab 5. It's time for our policy review of lease actions.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andy Bissett, Transactions and Record Services Manager. Are you seeing my slides as you'd expect this morning?
Sadly, no.
Okay.
We see your notes. You're almost there.
So Andy, if you've been playing along, there's a
Yep.
link, the center of
Display
the
settings
top
day
3
for
links,
everyone.
displaying settings.
Exactly.
And the first choice on that list is swap. And if you swap, it should work. Oop. Andy, you're muted. If you want to share that same screen, we can show you the shortcut again.
All right, let's try this again. All right, can everyone see the slides?
No, we can't.
All right, I think I need to, sorry, Zoom unexpectedly quit on me, so.
Andy, I'll share your slides for you and just, oh.
I am.
And then up in the upper part of the screen is display settings. Click on that. There you go.
Are we there?
See you and hear you. Good job.
Yes,
Wonderful.
perfect.
I'm gonna fill out my 10 minutes then, it looks like. Good morning, Commissioner. Bissett, Transactions and Record Services Manager. We have the lease actions policy for your review. Lease actions policy will
Shoot.
Did it just quit on me again, Zoom?
Yes, sadly.
Andy, how
All
about
right. Nick, you might have to
Andy,
remove me as co-host.
Andy, how about, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am going to, would you like me to share your slide deck for you and you can just prompt me?
That would be fine. Yes, thank you.
Give me a second to pull that up.
Are you ready?
So just call out slide when you want me to advance.
Okay, thanks, Nick. All right, I'll start from the top. Good morning, Commissioners. Andrew Sett, Transactions and Record Services Manager. As I was mentioning, the lease actions policy was last reviewed in October 2020 and is before you today with a few suggested revisions. Go ahead and slide. So this policy provides for the consistent administration in our leasing activity, and it's in complement to all of our business line specific policies. You can forward, Nick. And these other business line specific policies may direct whether staff is granted authority or whether the board reserves authority to approve lease actions. Slide. So the monthly leasing reports, these reflect lease actions and are prepared by the Transactions and Record Services team. The board leasing agenda appears on the board's agenda as a final action item each month. And so the items on the board leasing agenda come to you as recommendations, just as an individual agenda item would come to you. So you have the option to approve or deny these items. Separately, the staff leasing report appears in the board's packet as part of the staff report information item each month. Slide, Nick. So the proposed revisions to the lease actions policy are illustrated in Exhibit 2 of your packet materials. You can forward, Nick. To better describe the request for review decision-making process, a language has been added and clarified, and then the entire provision has been moved down from Section 1 down to Section 2. You can forward, Nick. Additionally, in Section 2, language has been added delineating the reporting of leasing activity. Slide. Staff recommends the board adopt the proposed revisions to lease actions policy. Slide is for questions, so I'd be glad to answer any questions the board may have regarding these proposed revisions. And final slide is a draft board order, which is also in your pack.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, appreciate that and the revisions. Any questions or comments from our commissioners? Commissioner Heath.
Yes, thank you. You know, I must admit that I was surprised on the decision with Chico Basin that was a staff decision. And then it could be revisited by the board, and I'm not trying to revisit that decision. I recognize being on the short end of that. But I do say that when I went back and tried to look at the policies to understand where I was mistaken about who made that final decision, I went to this section, and I don't know for sure where it differentiates what really is solely a board decision. Of course, we always want a staff recommendation, but I guess I need to put that out there. Is it located someplace else, or where is it that it talks about the differentiation between what staff and board decides?
And I see Elliot and Bill with a hand up, so maybe they hope to answer
Andy,
that.
I'm going to ask you to take the broader part of that question, but Commissioner Heath, with regard to Chico Basin, that was a staff recommendation, not a staff approval. And the competing party has the opportunity to contest the staff recommendation. If they don't contest it, then our recommendation gets completed. I think I've got that right, Andy, but and so what you were doing in the Chico Basin was making the decision of whether or not to affirm or deny the staff recommendation. So I just want to differentiate there. Now, your broader question of help you understand when staff can do something versus when we bring it to the board. I'm gonna let Andy and Nick tackle that, but just for clarity on Chico Basin, we made a recommendation, you made the decision.
Right, and some of the terminology might be adding to this. So when I was referencing the staff leasing report, which is part of the staff report and information item each month, those are all items that through business line specific policies have been, the board has delegated to staff to take those actions. An assignment, an extension, various items like that. And so those are all listed out for information purposes as part of the staff report. Items that come to you individually, like the ones preceding me today, and anything on the board leasing agenda, which I will present after this item, those are all recommendations to the board and require a final action item vote and a board order by the board to approve.
Thank you.
No, that's helpful clarification. Any other questions for Andy or comments? I am not seeing any. Let's go ahead and open this for public comment.
Members of the public, as is the case with action items, you have the opportunity to address the board with your comments. So you use the raise hand feature to do that. And Commissioner, I've got a hand from Steve Witt or Whitty, and I'd like to bring that gentleman forward to make a comment.
Okay, thank you.
The promotion to panelist today is taking a little bit longer than usual, but it's working.
So,
and sir, you rejoined us as a panelist, so you have control of your own microphone and camera for your comments.
Can you hear us, Mr. Witt, if you'd like to comment?
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Very good. I don't know if it's important to see me or not, but I had a question regarding the intention in revising the language that was formerly in section 1C, has now been moved to section 2C. And my question is what the intention is in revising the criteria from any person to any entity or person doing business with the board. Can you explain for me what the purpose of that change is and why you think this change is appropriate?
Andy, could you hear the question?
Yes, thank you. The change from any person to any entity.
No, sir, that's not the crux of the matter. The question is any person versus a person or entity doing business with the board.
Yes, we added the doing business with the board to delineate folks that were either in the process of applying for a lease, currently holding a lease, or having a lease termination decision up before the board. So those were sort of the three phases of doing business with the board that we wanted to identify through that addition of that language. Sort of the life cycle of the lease with us.
So you would have the board interpret that to mean that there is a changing hands of money, or a lease is involved, and a person appearing before the board, adding public comment. Are they not also doing business with the board?
No, Annie, I'm gonna just jump in real quick. No, sir, the change in language, public comment is always welcome and always available for any item. And specifically, the policy that we're talking about is the board giving staff the ability to conduct business essentially without having to bring every item to the board at every turn. The change in language doesn't change anything about public comment. Public comment will continue to be welcome. The policy in question was previously a little bit vague in that it made it sound like any member of the public could weigh in sort of party to the lease in question or the decision in question. And it's a special relationship. It's a special action to come to the board with a request for review. You have to be impacted personally by a decision that's been made. And if you're just a member of the public who's not party to that transaction, that's not part of the business at hand. So we needed to clarify that in policy because previously it was too vague. So let me know if I answered your question.
Yes, I think you did answer the question. The issue for me, though, is I believe that members of the public may be adversely affected by leasing decisions. And although they are not a principal party to any of the steps in the leasing process, they nonetheless may have a legitimate interest in attempting to affect the actions of the board. I feel like this change of language is restrictive of speech. It prohibits or precludes the public from involving or challenging a lease decision that has been made. And I'd like to strongly recommend that the board retain the language formally in your policy, which allows any person who believes to have been aggrieved to have an opportunity to request board review.
I understand the concern. I can't remember anyone doing that. I've only seen parties involved in the lease. But I don't know the history of this, Bill, if you maybe have some context.
Is that a question for me?
No, I'm asking Bill Ryan, our director.
Thank you.
Well, I think the difference is public comment versus standing to a contract, right? And that's the distinction we're trying to make here. So nobody is trying to stop the public from being able to comment on our matters. It's whether or not you're a party to the contract or directly affected by the decision here. You're probably getting into some AG things that Ed Hamrick, if you are out there, Ed, if you want to pick that thread up also. And I see Commissioner Clark also has a hand raised, may want to speak to this as well. But we're not attempting to stop public comment at all. But we are trying to...
Just for example, Bill, when a lease would come up, anyone from the public could question whether or not we should approve that lease. But they can't ask for a review of the decision once the lease is executed. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the crux of the issue.
Okay. Commissioner Clark, I'm going to go to you, and then Ed, you can weigh in with any comments reflecting the conversation.
Thank you. Yes, agreed that we're talking specifically about requests for review, and it does become an issue of standing. And to that end, in looking at the proposed language, I think I'm looking at the right version. I'm actually curious if the way we've drafted it here is overly broad to what we're actually intending. If we say any person or entity doing business with the board as having standing with respect to requesting review for this lease, would it not actually be, I guess I'm questioning the doing business with the board versus, as we're saying, being a party to, having a specific monetary interest or something with respect to that particular decision. I guess that's my question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I followed the question. Ed, do you have some insights for us?
Well, I don't want to overpromise, but the general concept, I don't think there's anything particularly subtle that's intended. It's merely that in the leasing process, the people who are involved are typically the person who's either recommended to receive or not receive a lease. And this lease actions policy is designed to clarify that those persons, if they disagree with a staff decision, can request review of that, or a staff recommendation can request a review of that process so that it is brought before the board for consideration. As people have noted, nothing about this is intended to preclude any member of the public from making a comment on a lease item at a board meeting, as all board decisions are brought to the board, to the commissioners. There's an opportunity for public comment on all items that are a decision matter, so there's no preclusion of the public speaking to a board matter. I believe staff, when they created this language, was merely trying to clarify the stakeholders in who are involved in a leasing decision-making process. I note that it does dovetail or echo language in the board's statute, which basically says that the commissioners may hear and determine claims of all persons who claim a legal interest in the land administered by the land board and are aggrieved by an action of the land board, which again focuses on people who are actually connected with the land. And I don't mean to dismiss just general members of the public, but it is a limiting factor there. And I think when staff developed that language, they were intending to echo that concept. The other question I wanted to answer is, I am not aware of any time when a party has asked for a request for review that wouldn't fit the definition that staff has developed, meaning somebody doing business as part of the leasing process, either a party whose the lease was recommended to or to be issued to or declined, and requesting a review from that context. I do not recall any just interested member of the public requesting, making a request for review.
Thank you, Ed. I think that's helpful.
Commissioner Heath has her hand up.
Oh, thank you. I'm sliding around on my screen. Commissioner Heath, please.
Yes. Well, to the point that you made, Ed, well, first of all, back up and say, I actually would be comfortable removing the doing business with the board phrase if it in fact does appear to the public that we are not as open as our intent is. And I guess in the description that you gave us, Ed, would it be that if somebody put a huge tower that land board approved on a land that an adjacent landowner couldn't come and protest that it's totally inappropriate in terms of their view line. I mean, I guess I don't want to get into what is doing with business with the board, and it feels to me if we could just leave that out, it gives us more latitude to really look at things on a case-by-case basis. I don't feel like in these years that it's been abused.
Is that a question for me?
No, I probably.
Sorry, I'm not sure if there's a response from me that you are looking for, and if so, I want to respond, but otherwise.
Okay.
I think my sense is, I appreciate Commissioner Heath, what you're saying, is that's when we hear from the public on public comment. You know, when a lease is up and we are being asked to vote on approving it or not, there's two scenarios, right? Either someone feels like the lease was inappropriately awarded or declined, and we've certainly heard those cases, or there's a lease that's up that the public has real concern with around what we're doing with that particular lease and related to some of your example. And that's where we listen very seriously to their concerns in with regards to our deciding to approve or not that particular lease. So I think there's an avenue for the public to weigh in that allows them to be heard and give voice to their concerns. But I get the tension, because we're also awarding a contract, right? We're making a contract. So if the issue really is about a dispute on who was awarded the lease for what reason, then that's a contract kind of appeal process from my perspective. That people often want to engage with. And I understand the difference between the public having a particular issue and a lessee or potential lessee with us. So Andy, I appreciate you're trying to clarify that, because I think we could only hear a review if requested by someone who is a part of that lease. And that's why I asked the question. I don't think at this point we can have a member of the public, let's say we're going to approve the lease, or we've approved the lease, come back and want to ask for a review of that of any sort, or a recommendation from the staff is coming forward, we're moving forward, and then someone outside from the public says, I want this reviewed. And I think that's the difference we're grappling with, right, Ed, to some real degree.
Yes, I think that's exactly it. And again, stressing that in your public meeting process, the public has lots of opportunity to comment on board business, but requesting a review of a staff decision on a lease. Like I say, I'm not aware of the circumstance Mr. Whitty has described ever being presented to the board. But yes, the request for review, again, I think staff is trying to clarify that that's for the parties in the leasing process.
Well, I'm just going to follow what you're saying, Ed. Because a request for review triggers its own process with the staff and with us. So it's not just, it initiates a different process. And
yes.
I mean, in theory, you could have every lease that we do have a member of the public say they want the staff to do a review of it. And I think that would just be a little cumbersome, and frankly, probably not appropriate, given all the opportunity for the public to weigh in on our decision-making process. Commissioner Heath,
right. So I want to clarify. So using an example from an earlier action item on this agenda, are you saying that, let's use the example on the dark sky, that if on that mineral lease that was approved, that half dozen members of the community said it does interrupt the noise, the light, but they're not actually business related issues. Would they have so-called standing to raise that issue?
Ed Hemrick?
So, yeah, so that was a decision made by the board, by the commissioners. And if a party wanted to challenge it, they would not be pursuing it through the request for review or lease actions policy, because that's a final decision by the board. And if they wanted to challenge it, they would challenge it under the Administrative Procedures Act. And there would be potentially some question and the Administrative Procedures Act into a district court. It would be a trial, a request for an appeal of a board decision to Colorado District Court. I think there would probably be a question of whether a person in that situation had standing. I don't want to go beyond saying I think it would be an issue that would require analysis both by counsel for the land board and the court. But that's beyond the scope of the lease actions policy. That would be handled under Colorado statute. So the request for review doesn't entitle anybody to seek basically the board to reconsider a decision that it has already made that's final. They could certainly request the board to do it, and the board could decide to do that. If that's the case, the board would have that discretion. But in general, when the board votes, that's a final decision that the avenue for review is through the courts under the Administrative Procedures Act. That's how it's laid out.
And so Ed, that's why we do have public comment before we take any final action. So that can be weighed in consideration of whether or not, for example, if we had had 20 neighbors show up or come to public comment and or the lessee adjacent to that potential, the mine, we would have listened to them, and that would have factored into our decision whether or not to make a lease or to approve a lease. So there's a place in the process where I think people can have a tremendous influence and impact on our decision making, but it isn't after the fact is my take on this. And I know I'm thinking Bill Ryan has a comment, and then I see Commissioner Chavez.
Commissioner Heath, specific to your example there also, the mine's got to get permitted through the county. And so the public has an avenue to go to the county permitting and ask them to put that provision in place as well. So I think there are multiple checkpoints in the process of the example you've given. I just want to put that out there, that the permitting agencies have control here as well.
Yeah, I just think that's after the fact. I'm not going to beat this horse anymore.
No, I think it's a really, Mr. Witt raised a really helpful point for us to have a conversation about. Ed, is it your feeling that the new language being proposed as part of the new policy kind of helps clarify, is this the right language? And that was raised by Commissioner Clark too, to clarify the parties that are able to ask for that review process with us.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you guys, we can massage the language. We can, I think it is fairly clear, but we can certainly, and I'm happy to massage the language and bring it back to the board and see if it is more closely aligns with how the board wants the optic.
I think we would like it just to reflect the statute that defines our role. And and Bill, is that?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. We're
Yeah.
mirroring statute here.
Yeah.
361131 talks about persons who claim a legal interest. And so I think, again, this isn't for all of our business. This is for the request for review portion.
Correct.
So,
Why
I think
don't we
we made
use
that
those?
distinction already, Commissioner Scanlon, and I want to highlight that again.
Why don't we just use those words? You know, as, you know, exactly reflect the statute language. Instead of the doing business, what did you just read off to us, Bill? And Ed had done so before.
Well, I think I've got the right site here. But I think we're in 361131.
Mhm.
So, yeah, claim a legal interest.
Yes. Ed, wouldn't that more
Yes,
accurately reflect the
that-
statute and
Yes.
intent? Okay.
So procedurally, would you like us to update that language and bring it back, or do you just want to, would you prefer to direct us to update the language to reflect the statute today? And then before Commissioner Scanlon signs the policy, she'll be able to confirm that we've done that. And if that doesn't sound like it's met what the board is suggesting here, we can certainly bring it back for the board to discuss. Happy to do it however the board would like to proceed. Just want to make sure that staff and I have a clear understanding about how we're going to proceed.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. How are folks feeling about moving forward with that change to the language, or would you rather see it in final review of the policy?
You know, I'm good with the language as it is, but if you want to add a few words, that's fine with me, and we can vote today. I'm good with that.
I concur with Commissioner Chavez.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's make that note that we are going to change that to any person or entity claiming a legal interest instead of doing business. Is that, did I say that correctly?
If you just direct us to use the statutory language.
Perfect. I got it.
Yeah, I like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, let's do that. And then I'll look at it.
And
I'll
then
look
when we
at
show it
it.
to you for signature, Commissioner Scanlon will provide you with a copy of the statute. And if you have any questions about it, then we'll just bring it back to the board for reconsideration.
Okay, that works for me as well. Okay, I'm not quite entirely sure how we frame that as a motion to improve this policy, but I'm sure there's a way to do it that reflects this conversation if any of the commissioners would like to make that motion.
Can you make the motion?
Sure.
Commissioner Scanlon?
I'll make the motion. And Ed will help me. So after consideration of the materials presented and testimony reflecting, as well as reflecting the conversation at the January 10th board meeting, the board determines that it's in the best interest of the trust to approve the proposed modifications with the direction to staff to more directly reflect statute in a final version of the policy. And that is the lease actions policy 200-004. The board delegates authority to the director to take appropriate action consistent with the board's decision. Ed, will that work?
I think so. Yes.
I hope so.
It works for me. I understand what we're
Yeah.
doing. I think that's the critical element here.
Okay. Agreed.
Okay, I will second that motion.
All right. Second, Commissioner Frobe, we will call a vote. Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Commissioner Scanlon, Commissioner Clark had an 11 o'clock hard stop. And
Okay.
so she had chatted me that she needed to leave.
Okay. No worries. We'll move on to Commissioner Frobe.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, that motion passes 4-0. I appreciate the comments, Mr. Witt, that you brought forward. I think that helped to clarify our role and was important, an important discussion.
Thank you for your consideration.
Absolutely. All right, Andy, we're staying with you to do our leasing agenda for January.
Thank you. Without any technical difficulties, and for the record again, Andy Bissett, Transactions and Record Services Manager. We have the January 2024 board leasing agenda for your review and approval. This month, there are 7 items on the agenda, including 3 competitive bids, 3 agriculture competitive bids, and 4 new leases, 4 new recreation leases. So staff recommends the board approve the January 2024 board leasing agenda.
Thank you, Andy. Do we have a motion?
I have a question first.
Yep, Commissioner.
And somebody can.
I skipped way ahead. I just went ahead for everybody.
Public comment.
Yes.
I just had a question, and then maybe an answer later from William or somebody about the parcel, or 2 of them, they're expiring in CRP, Conservation Reserve Program. So they were in we were in the program, that Landward was enrolled in CRP, it expired, now it's going back to lease, or our lessee had it in a CRP and expired and their lease is over? I guess I don't understand that very much. And again, I don't need an answer today. It's just, if maybe William or somebody can explain that.
I'm trying to bring William up.
Or whoever, yeah, I'm sorry.
William, I'm sending you requests to become a panelist, and somewhere on your screens, it's asking you to accept that.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. Can you tell me which, I'm looking at the agenda now, which one are you referring to?
2 and 3. About expirations of CRP leases. And just, I just don't understand it. It was, the lease expired in the Conservation Reserve Program, and then we put them out for lease. So,
yes. I will verify this, but I believe they were expired CRP leases that were then put out to be leased as grazing land.
but we can't, can Landward make a contract with?
We do it through the lessee. Commissioner Chavez, we do it through the lessee. So William, he's asking about the mechanics of how CRP works.
How we are involved in CRP?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
so,
we do. Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
No, you go. I just want to make sure you're answering the right question.
Yeah. So the CRP, we've been involved in numerous CRP leases through the lessees. They apply, and then we take a percentage. We receive a percentage of the revenue off of the CRP.
Yeah, encourage that 100%. But then, but why did they expire? The lease, and then we put it out for lease because the existing lessee just didn't want it anymore after the lease expired.
And sometimes we determine that it would be better to put it back into grazing than putting it back into CRP for the health of the land, the soil health, etc. So instead of putting it back into the CRP program, we put it out for grazing at the expiration of the CRP lease.
William, is
Yeah,
it correct that the CRP leases have a term to them?
They did, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
term of that contract expired, and then the parties make a choice about what's best for the land next. Is that
Correct.
correct?
And that or the lessee that had the CRP maybe had first right of refusal, but just didn't, or 118 rights and just didn't want to.
I
Carry on.
don't believe, I'll double check that. I don't believe on 2, I don't believe that was the case, but I will double check it on both of those and get back to you.
And again, my curiosity and interest in that is, I think it's great. The revenue that we share under a CRP program, it's fantastic and it's great for the land. And I was just curious how that worked, because I really would encourage that actually.
Yeah, it has been the case of, rather than when land have been in CRP and a good grassland has been established, we've been leaning towards putting that out to a grazing lease rather than continuing with the CRP where there was not as much use on that land as far as animal use. And not always, but if that is deemed to be the most advantageous return and result, that's what we've been doing.
I want to offer a clarification. I've got a bird in my ear reminding me that in our CRP policy, if CRP expires, the first next use is grazing.
Okay. But with no 118 rights associated.
I think Commissioner Chavez's question is, how is it that the lease is changing hands now and out for bid?
Yes.
And why is it not staying with the lessee who had it in CRP?
So at the expiration of the CRP lease, we put it out for competitive. We put them out for competitive bid.
So you are doing what our policy instructs us.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Are we comfortable? Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Or are we comfortable moving to public comment? Okay, Nick, do you want to see if there are any members of the public?
Yes, I do, as soon as I'm off mute. Members of the public, if you'd like to address the board on this item, please use the raise hand feature. I'll put my own hand down. Commissioner, no hands are raised.
All right, now we can ask for a motion. So sorry, Andy, I was so used to talking with you about your motion. I just got ahead of myself. Do we have a motion to approve the January board leasing agenda?
Commissioner Scanlon?
Yes.
I move we support the board leasing agenda for January 2024.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Nope. That was Commissioner Frobe between coughs. We'll call a quick vote. Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Frobe?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That passes 4-0. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Appreciate you spending so much time with us. We are on to minutes. Does anyone have any changes from the December board meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, we'll pass those via acclamation. With that, we'll conclude our meeting. And Bill, do you have any insights into our February meeting?
I do. The meeting, I hope, will be just the morning again. It looks like it should wrap up before noon based on what I see right now. And that will be one day, Wednesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. So spend your Valentine's morning with us. And Commissioner Heath, I think we can do the meeting virtually. Let's plan on that again. Commissioner Chavez, there's no need for you to drive in. But Commissioner Heath, I call your attention to that because I know you're committed that morning to doing something with Kristen and History Colorado. And so we will get with you separately and work out those logistics. but let's plan on February being virtual and ought to be just the morning.
Right, we have a plan. All right, perfect. Thank you all. Appreciate us dusting off our Zoom skills. And look forward to talking with folks in February. And thanks, Josie, for representing.
Nice to see all of you.
Good to see you all. Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.